Have yourself a merry.
What a perfect way to start it. Yeah.
Subject you to my eventual future of just singing Christmas standards.
Yeah, thank you all for tuning in. This is just me sitting here getting a private Christmas performance from Todd
Yeah,
Kerns.
exactly. Yeah, I just call my friends and sing Christmas songs till they hang up on me, which is usually pretty fast, actually.
Well, my
First
number's
verse,
always
click.
open. Yeah, my
Yeah,
number's always
exactly.
open. I can even help you hammer out some of the harmonies. So
Yeah. Oh, there you go.
a team effort all around.
Absolutely.
So what's up, man? What have you been up to?
You know, sitting around waiting for COVID to stop. Back and forth from LA a bunch, finished up the Minefield record, as you know.
What band is that? No.
Minefield, these kids from, hang on, I'm going to share our link now because I'm that kind of guy.
Yeah, that's what, all these videos start with me just looking at my phone for like
just sharing
15 seconds.
your stuff, yeah.
I got it posted on the Minefield page too.
Well done.
I'm the whiz kid, man.
You're what?
I'm the whiz kid, I
know, it's like you're like such a, what do you call it, like internet social media guy. I'm anti-social media.
Oh, I'm gonna say your social media game is pretty strong. Actually, I'm kind of jealous of it sometimes.
I honestly, people tell me that, and I'm always like, dude, I have no idea how you mean that, because in reality, what ended up happening was, even pre-Slash, it was, I had a pretty good hang and a pretty good following and whatnot, but it was never really sort of like, ask me a question, like that kind of like, I was just sort of like,
you were always in everybody's top friends on MySpace.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah, MySpace. I totally forgot about that till the other day. I was like, I did have a MySpace page, but I really don't think I knew what I was doing. I think I kind of thought like, I distinctly remember being in a band back in the day, and somebody was like, they were starting to talk about websites, and I was like, why the hell do we need a website? What the hell is that? Who the hell wants that? That sounds like a hassle. And now it's, now we're way on the other side of that, where websites are almost kind of like, well, it's cool that you have a website, but it's the social media thing and like, all that kind of thing. But in reality, even now, it's sort of like, I just kind of post what's going on, what we're doing. And the Slash thing really kind of, really took it up a notch, getting to go around the world 100 times and making friends in South America and Australia and Japan and all over the world. And suddenly there's, Facebook pages dedicated to, Frank Stodoris, Zimbabwe, Brent Fitz, Kazakhstan, it's like, so we all kind of laugh about that, but it's an amazing ride. This stuff goes pretty fast. I mean, it's funny to me because I look at you and you're half my age, and I think to myself, it goes fast, but it's also, it sort of can be fleeting in a way. I've been doing this long enough where I've had the, oh yeah, dude, I'm making it, and oh, hello, reality check, and then like, dude, we're on fire, and then like, oh, okay, and that's just the nature of, you keep doing this long enough, and there's ups and downs and peaks and valleys, and I assume this is currently kind of a valley that we're in, not by any other cause other than fucking viruses and stuff. Oh, we're not supposed to be cursing on this. We're talking about anything adult anymore.
Oh, it's okay. I make sure that we get flagged with the big E on all of these episodes.
Well done.
So, I mean, they're viewing at their own discretion, so.
It's a free country. It's a free country, exactly.
Depending on where you're watching.
I got my Rose Apothecary shirt. This is from Schitt's Creek, the TV show, which is fantastic.
Oh, nice. I'm
but
not
it's just
familiar with that.
It's just a ridiculous reference to a store that the people in the show have, but it's for people who are on the inside tip. I loved it. It was really funny. It's very Canadian, which is
okay.
As you know,
so I'm sure it's really friendly as well.
I'm secret Canadian.
Secret Canadian. I'm gonna say you've been in the States so long now. We've done brainwashed you and warped your whole mind. So
as my friend says, he goes, saying about Canadians, and he goes, and they look just like us. It's like it's an invasion of the body snatchers type thing or something.
They say my first introduction to Canadians was Terrence and Phillips, so I'd say my whole perspective was fucked once I actually met one.
And you realize our heads don't flap like that.
I was really disappointed, to be honest.
I know. It's really funny how like things like Terrence and Phillip, well, especially those guys, the South Park guys are good on the accents and the aboots and all that kind of stuff.
Aboots, yeah, that's great.
We're all good. And a lot of, when you don't live there anymore, like we do, a bunch of us are living down here, and you talk to your friends back home. Like I'll go and talk to my wife, and she'll be like, "Were you just talking to your family?" And I go, "Yeah, I was just on the phone with my brother." And she goes, because the accent just kind of boom comes back. I know I have an accent, but it's sort of
the U's get replaced with 2 O's.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Sorry instead of sorry.
Yeah,
that kind of thing. Yeah,
that's great.
Yeah.
Well, cool, man. I had to research you on Wikipedia because I really don't know shit about you.
We've written an entire record together, been hanging out doing press together for months, and it's like, oh, who the hell is this guy?
Man, and I was telling somebody the other day, I was like, me and him were even playing the same fucking event next month, and we're not even still going to be in the same room.
Yeah, we're still not in the same room. It's like, oh well, that's the nature of how weird this particular chapter.
It's just
of life
we have to go as long as possible without actually being in the same room. The first gig, I will just stay in the hotel and stream my set.
And I'll be like on a big screen.
Nice.
The big screen will come down, and I'll just be playing on it. Yeah.
It's just going to always be the gag. That way, in 20 years, we can really bank in on being in the same room together.
They're actually going to be in the same room this time. Yeah.
Now we can sell tickets for $1,000 a piece.
It is a weird time though, because not only with doing something like this, where we're recording, in completely different time zones and all that kind of stuff. But it's weird how you can have friendships and relationships with people. Most of them I've met in my life. Like a lot of the time we meet people on the road, and it's like I keep in touch with some guy from Australia or friends from us, from different areas all over the world. And this and and our phones and everything have made that possible. But it is an interesting thing to be as tight as you and I are, yet having never really,
Yeah, I would say that I talk to you more than most people in my phone.
Yeah, I know.
It's crazy that
we're in constant contact about, you're just talking about the album cover artwork and blah, 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 and Seinfeld memes and whatever the hell else. But, I think that's really kind of a really cool thing about, as much as people, kids these days with their phones and they're hipping and they're hopping, it's like, I'm always like rolling my eyes, like, give me a break, bro. It's like we live in a day and age that it's exciting that we get to kind of keep in touch with people in a way that we never do, especially during all this. You know what I mean? It's like, I haven't seen my family as of Christmas. I haven't seen my family in a year. It's like last time we were together was Christmas time, because going to Canada is a total hassle right now. So we just kind of decided to let it, just kind of wait till things are a little more chill. So, that's what having this kind of, ability is amazing.
Oh, without Zoom, I would have already lost my fucking mind during all of this so far. Yeah.
I know.
Those songs would have been written in a completely different direction.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Why are all these songs about murder?
Great. All right, man. Well, I only have about 60 or 70 questions written down. So,
all right. Hang on. Cancel my 2 a.m. call.
Yeah. Well, cool. Let's go ahead and jump right into this. I've heard the story for anybody that hasn't, about you getting your first guitar. Your dad kind of played guitar, the chords, the cowboy chords stuff.
Totally.
Talk to me about when you got your first bass and when that was.
Well, my father had kind of, he had a really cool harmony with the F holes, like a really cool acoustic with F holes in it. I don't think he really knew how cool it was. It was kind of like, but it was super dope. And then I bought it. My dad got me an Epiphone. It was an Epi, they called it. It was like probably like the affordable line of the affordable line. And it just, I just lived with that guitar. Me and my friends would just sit around. And it's funny because I see Beatles interviews and things like that, and they talk about how there's a guy on the other side of town knows a B seventh chord, and they go like sit with some guy and learn a new chord. And I was like, it's kind of funny to hear that, but it's true, where we would be like literally like, oh, this guy showed me this chord, and you'd be like, oh wow, and you would just sort of add that to your little world. And then one summer I was my dad just had, in his weird logic, was just like, well, you got a guitar, we should get you a bass. I remember thinking, like, I could barely play the guitar. What are you talking about? You know? And I mean, like, literally, like, the cowboy chords getting around, you know, Michael row the boat ashore, all the songs you don't want to learn, you know, your guitar teacher shows you these songs. You're like, can we just play anything, like, sort of pseudo rock and roll?
Yeah.
But we walked into a shop in Edmonton, Canada, where my relatives lived, and walked into the shop, and it was funny because now that you've mentioned it, I had a choice between. It's weird that my father was not like a big spender this way, so they must have been really affordable at the time, or like really on sale. But it was this Gibson EB3, or this Gretsch electric, of which I don't even know what it was called, but Rick Springfield, oddly enough, in the 80s played this guitar. It had a really pointy horn on it, and it was a big-bodied, kind of hollow-bodied, but it was a thin-bodied hollow body. It was a very strange guitar. And I remember going, well, that's pretty dope. But somehow I got talked into, yeah, you should probably have the bass. And I never regret it because it was a Gibson bass. And of course, the word Gibson meant, you know, everybody knew what that meant, especially on the back of Kiss albums.
Yeah.
You know, it says Kiss plays Gibson guitars and Pearl drums because they want the best.
Yeah.
And it had the Gibson logo with that kind of like bubbly effect on it. So seeing it, you know, I knew my seventh grade teacher had a Gibson Les Paul, and he may as well have had Excalibur in his house. You know, it's just kind of like, what?
Yeah.
And he actually loaned me this like Sears guitar before I had an electric guitar that I would just use as my jammer guitar, because he was kind of like, here, just use this. And we'd go over to his place and he'd show us chords and stuff like that. And he had a Les Paul Standard, Cherry Sunburst, and it was just like, every time we'd walk in, there'd be like, ah, you know, just be like, club him on the head, steel. I've invited him to Slash shows many times since then. It's funny, we kind of.
So you could try to get the guitar off of him,
yeah,
right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
I'm trying to get into, so maybe someday if he ever like, you know, wants to like give the guitar away as some sort of gesture, I'll be the guy that was like, hey, I was there for you, man. That one time in Winnipeg, Canada. But anyway, so we got the bass, and then it sort of like, you know, we moved out of town not long after, although we played with my friends in the one town, and then moved to another town, and then it was sort of like, it was surprising. It seemed like everybody, like it seemed like a lot of kids played like music and played guitars, or this guy's got a drum kit, and then somebody's like, this guy that I was in class with, his brother had a band, and they were looking for a bass player. And this guy's got a Gibson. Hey, dude, he's got a Gibson. I remember in between classes in the hallways, like, he's got a Gibson. He's got a Gibson. And I was like, this totally dorky kid, and like, you know, I could barely play. But I remember getting together with those guys, and you know, playing Rock and Roll by Zeppelin, and you know, you can get around on the 12-bar kind of thing. And the best thing about playing with guys that are better than you is that you kind of have to up your game. So my game got upped really fast. From there, it became kind of like, eventually that started as a 5-piece with a, you know, 2 guitar players and a singer, and I was just the bass player, was eventually pared down to a 3-piece with me playing bass and singing. And that just kind of happened by the selection of people. You know, music's that way where people are like eventually going to go to school or get a job or get a life, you know?
Yeah, that was actually my next question, was how, you know, the singing part got added to your arsenal, because like you said, for a lot of guitar players, singing becomes something that just kind of happens by the nature of, you know, somebody leaving or it just becoming available. It's not really something that you ever set out to intentionally do.
Yeah, it's funny. For me, I've said it countless times, and I say it even now, and people are kind of like even when I started playing with Slash, a lot of people knew me as a lead singer, and they were kind of like, isn't it weird being, you know, just back there playing bass? Of which it's not really like that at all. I mean, there's been a ton of guys who probably would be like, I could play anything Todd's playing. I'm like, well, go ahead and play that and sing that.
Yeah.
And it's not a walk in the park. It's
because you're doing all the high harmonies during all those fucking songs too.
I've really bit off way more than I can chew at any given moment. So there are nights where I'm up there going like, whose idea was this? Like, oh yeah, this was my idea. But yeah, it literally starts as, you know, in my high school band, and the one guitar player was really very musical and very knowledgeable. And he was sort of like, let's sing these harmonies together. And he would kind of like, you sing this, you sing that kind of thing. And you're like, okay. And eventually it's, you know, that turned into like, you know, everybody would sing a song, you know, or just sing songs. And okay, now you sing one. And then, hey, Todd, you sing one. And the next thing I knew, Todd was singing a lot of the songs. And I'm like, wait a second. I was happy just to stand in the background, kind of like rocking out. And then all of a sudden I had all the pressure of being the lead singer, as it were. So, which, it taught me a lot. It taught me a lot to go on the road and to be able to play, because, whether I'm not Jaco Pastorius, and I've never claimed to be. In fact, I don't want to be. I think that's way too much for anybody to take on. But I just wanted to be, in a rock band and play music. And I loved guys like Sting. I loved at the time because I was a bass player singer, so I couldn't help but gravitate towards him and that kind of thing. And not to mention, Kiss was still a major factor. Gene is a bass player singer. Paul McCartney is a bass player singer. So
Geddy
it just
Lee.
sort of kind of went that way. Geddy Lee. Although Geddy, again, is from a different school as well, yeah.
I feel like there should just be statues of Geddy Lee all over Canada.
Prime Minister Lee.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, he's sort of the, he certainly would be the
his face is on some currency. It has to be, right?
It certainly should be. That's kind of why I'm trying to get this to, is I don't know what, but he really should be.
Let's start that petition right now. Somebody in the comment section, go ahead and head over to change.org. Yeah.
The $5 bill in Canada should have Geddy Lee on it. I'm not sure who's on. I'm not sure I'm offending right now.
They should make a $21.12 bill. And
there you go.
That would be a good.
There you go. 21.12. Yeah, exactly.
I'm sure there's some fucking Rush meme that's already been made about that.
This bill is worth $21.12. 21.12. There you go.
Nice. Perfect. So when did you first start playing in the States? I know Age of Electric played at the Whiskey, and you talked about that was the first time you ever ran into Slash. So what was it like coming into the States for the first time? What were some noticeable differences between Canadian audiences and audiences in the States?
Well, it's really weird. It would be really weird to compare the trip to Los Angeles to Hollywood specifically, to call that any sort of because I could have came from Detroit or Des Moines or Texas or wherever, and Hollywood would have seemed like outer space. You know what I mean? It just was. I came down on one trip prior to that. I think I've told you this story before. We went down. It wasn't even music related. I just went down I wanted to see the Sunset Strip. I don't think I was really even old enough to get in the club, so I'm not sure how I would have pulled this off, but it was a Tuesday night, and we decided, let's go to Gazzari's, because Gazzari's was still around back then.
Of course.
It went on to be the Key Club, and I'm not sure what it is now, but it was the first club I was on the Sunset Strip. Then this was the height of the Sunset Strip. This is, Motley Crue and who knows what else is going on. But it was the place to be and the place to get signed, and Rat and whatever the hell else, all those other bands. And I thought, I'm going to walk into this club on a Tuesday night and have my life change, because the band is going to be the best band on the entire planet, because it's Hollywood, and this is where you come. And I've, been playing music for some time at this point, been around a lot of bands, around a lot of musicians. And I remember just thinking, this is one of the worst bands I've ever seen, and thinking these guys got this gig, and it sort of opened my eyes to, to the thing, you're kind of it's sort of you're seeing behind the curtain, oh, I get it. And it makes you kind of feel like, if these guys can play Gazzari's, which is a notable club at the time, I'm assuming I can,
of course.
Anybody can, really. So years later, when we came down with the Age of Electric, it was sort of apropos of nothing other than the fact that we wanted to, do the thing and try and showcase and get some people to come see us. And we actually went down there and stayed for a trip. I can't remember how long exactly. It feels like a couple of weeks, but it might have been more like 3. I don't know. And we stood out on the strip and we handed out flyers. We were really good friends with a band called Anna Black. They were from Toronto area of Canada. And they were doing really well on the strip. This is 91. So that era is just getting ready to die. No one knows that in that moment. Everybody's kind of, this is going to last forever.
Yeah.
Okay. And so we went down there, and that was kind of the anchor. We had a Saturday night at the Roxy. We were going to open for Anna Black because they were friends of ours. And on the Friday night, we landed a gig with a band called the Zeros, who were really big in LA at the time. They all had purple hair. It was a whole thing. They had a Zeros mobile that was purple, and they drive an old hearse or a limo or something that would drive around town. It was a whole thing. And so, and to walk into the Whiskey, it still has that effect on me, those clubs. When I walk into them, I'm like, You know, I know exactly what's happened here. I know exactly, you know, when you're standing on that stage, you know who's been there, from Jim Morrison to David Lee Roth and all points in between and beyond, and then the Roxy and all that kind of stuff. So it was a real whirlwind kind of thing. And but like most things that we did, we had a lot of, had we hung around and sort of turned it into like just moved to LA, we might have been able to turn it into something. But at the same time, it's, you know, it was a weird time. Like the Sunset Strip thing was, nobody knew at the time, but it was starting to go away. And, you know, Guns was, I want to say, I might be wrong on the date, because Use Your Illusions had not been released yet. It was just getting ready to fire up. And so whenever that was, I have to go back and do the math, but somewhere around then anyway. But again, the shows are markedly different anyway, because we were accustomed to playing in Canada in clubs that were predominantly cover bands. We sort of wedged ourselves into this cover band circuit, which I really don't regret doing. When I was a kid, I used to play these clubs too, and you'd play 3 or 4 sets a night. So in Canada, this was a thing. You could travel on a Sunday and set up and you would play Monday to Saturday in these clubs. And the clubs were in a hotel, so you stayed in the hotel generally. And it would be freezing cold in Canada. You'd like literally stay in the hotel, and you'd like eat in the restaurant and play the
We're
gig.
talking like July.
Not quite, but yeah. But it really taught me a lot about, like, because you get to a point where after, say, you know, like if you're a band in Hollywood on the Sunset Strip, you're really sort of only supposed to be playing like once a month, because if you play too much, you kind of you exhaust your audience essentially. But in that kind of medium, which is a lot of playing in some small town where there's a lot of people there working on the oil rigs that don't really live there, and they're just kind of like lonely and drinking booze, and they got their back to the band, because I'm not sure if those are men or women or what's going on up there. But
I still play these gigs to these days.
We all do, man. We all do. And but it really sort of cut my teeth, because it felt like within a year I had played, if you considered every one of those sets a show, I had played more shows in a year than most bands would ever play. So, you know, it's like when the Beatles went to Hamburg before they got signed and all that kind of stuff happened, I know that really kind of upped their game. Like it really made them tighter as a band, better as musicians.
Oh yeah, dude. When you're playing those like 4 sets a night, it kind of gives you time to hone your craft a little bit. And even if
you become
there's only,
so comfortable.
Yeah. Even if there's only like 5 people sitting there, like you said, and they've all got their fucking eyes on some game on the TV, you know, you're still getting that experience of being on the stage and playing with 2 or 3 other guys. So, and
it's part of the experience, you know. I think I never really, because it never worked that way for me. I just can't imagine the, 23 years old, here's the keys to the world, here's all the money you need. The end. You know what I mean? I just can't imagine that sort of existence, because
I'll let you know what it's like here in a couple of months.
Yeah, please. You're a good guy to know if that's the case. Yeah. To me, I don't regret it at all. I really loved just playing music. And as I was saying before, friends would drop off, guys would go to school, or dad owned a company back home. I just want to go back and have kids and be a normal person. And I would totally understand that, because it was like, we're not making any money. Everybody's starving. But I was still the one going like, isn't this great? Like, we get to do this you know what's going to happen tomorrow night? We're going to do this again. You know, we're going to play music again. And it's like, and I think that any sane person probably went like, what the hell are we doing? You know? But for me, it was just kind of like, I enjoyed it so much. And I think it turned into, it turned into this. Really.
Yeah.
I'm still here. The lifer. Yeah.
It was all a road leading to this path right here. This
right now. Exactly. Yeah.
Of course. That's what your whole life has been waiting for, is this moment, Todd. I'm
glad in many ways.
I could help.
In many ways. Yeah.
Cool. So when you first moved to Vegas, what were you up to when you originally got into town?
Well, I had friends down here playing music and whatnot, and I was in Vancouver. I had was producing or making records, which I thought was going to be a lot more rewarding than it kind of ended up being, because of course this is also with the shift in the record industry where like the downloading, and now it's getting to a point where record production, as you know, as we've been doing ourselves, record production has become more and more, major studios are closing, people are becoming more attuned to doing it themselves or in smaller settings. So this was early days in that. So we kind of jumped on that. We recorded a lot of bands. And, you know, I just kind of assumed one day we would find the next Led Zeppelin or Jane's Addiction or something. And I'd be like, you know, just like how rewarding that would be. But, you know, I realized I still had a lot of fire in me. You know, it's kind of like, because there was a part of me that thought like, this way I can stay home and be with my family. You know, I don't have to be away, but then you're home, you know, in the same city as your family, but you only happen to be at the studio for 18 hours a day. You know, it's like you're just constantly, and you go back and wake up and go right back to the studio. So in reality, that didn't really work the way I thought it would work. So when the States kind of, Vegas especially, presented itself, it was more like I'd come down here and I'd be like, you know, I'd see my friends kind of, you know, working a lot, because Vegas is a lot of musicians here. I say every time you walk into a casino, next time you walk into a casino in Vegas, when things are normal, you'll realize how many venues there are. There's multiple clubs. There's a duo over here. There's a guy playing piano over there. There's a show band in that room. There's a rock band over here. And it's just like, all my friends here are musicians. We all are working musicians. And a lot of them are guys who got spit out the other side of the record industry, had a deal, we're going to do this and that, and they came out and they ended up here. And, you know, when I came down here, it was sort of like, I had no preconceived idea of what to do. I just kind of was like, this will be fun. And then very quickly I was in Europe with Brent Muscat, as you've spoken to Brent. We did a version of Faster Pussycat over there. And then we came back to town and put together
with
the Sinners.
Kurt Frolic as well.
With Kurt, exactly. Well, Kurt was an old friend of mine. He's one of the guys, he's actually the guy who sort of said to me, like, you should come down to Vegas, man. There's a lot of stuff going on down here. And we would do this Kiss gig every every Halloween. And those guys were really into it, real serious about it. And I'd come down and I just loved to do it because I love Kiss. And so that kind of initially opened the door for me. And then, you know, just sort of very quickly rolled into that Fast Pussycat thing, which rolled into the Sin City Sinners. And we did that for, I think, only 3 years before Slash came along. It just seemed like I was kind of like, you know, what started as a fun little Tuesday night jam band with Brent Muscat and the other guys just turned into, like, suddenly we were playing like the best showrooms in Vegas. I was like, you're going to put this in there? It was just kind of like, are you crazy? Like the riffraff we would draw in there, and boy, did we draw, you know, the riffraff was drawing a lot of riffraff, and it was great because it felt like, you know, this rock and roll scene kind of started to explode in Vegas. And I feel like we were, you know, in part responsible for that. And then, you know, and then the Slash thing came along, that really kind of changed everything.
Yeah, so kind of segueing into that, Brent is the one that kind of helps you get into that situation. So when did you meet Brent Fitz? I know obviously you both are Canadian. So when did he kind of circle into your life?
Brent and I have known each other like probably 30 plus years. It's just one of those weird things where he was in another band and I was in a band, you know, and that kind of crossing of like, hey dude, what's going on? And always very talented, always very musical, and always very upwardly mobile. He always seemed like he was going places. Like he was the guy that was like, it's like, where's Brent Fitz? And he's like, oh, you know, he's moved to Los Angeles. I'm like, whoa, really? Like he's going to go, you know, become a whatever he's going to do. And he landed in Bruce Kulick's band. Bruce and John Corabi had a band called Union, and Brent was in that. We're like, whoa, that's crazy. And I remember we kind of same with Corey Churko, who I play with in Toque, where we've lost touch with each other like several times in our lives, but it always sort of seems to kind of like stumble into one another, and it turns into I remember I went to this the band Orgy was playing in Santa Ana,
okay,
at the Galaxy Theater, I think it was called. Very cool place. And I remember going out there when I was in LA to see these guys. They were signed to Korn's label. It was a big thing. And he was like, oh, you gotta go see this band. John came out from, Jonathan from Korn came out and sang a song with them. It was like a big deal. And I'm standing backstage just kind of like, you know, as you always stand awkwardly backstage, like, why am I back here? Who? Because I happen to know somebody. And I just, out of nowhere, I hear Todd Kerns. Like, I'm in LA, like, and nobody really knows me. I kind of went, then it was Brent Fitz, all these years later. And so then it just, when I landed back in the Vegas thing, Fitz had only recently kind of landed out here himself. So that connection kind of happened, and we were tight, and we never really played together. We played a couple of shows around Vegas just for fun, like somebody put together some jam night, or I can't remember what it was exactly, but he got the gig with Slash, and then I had no preconceived notion of like doing it. I just sort of said like, that's so awesome that you're doing that. Awesome. And then a little while later he called and said, it was funny because I've told this story many times. I'm sitting in a Chili's with my father. With this house, my father came down because I didn't know what the hell I was doing, buying a house. I'm like, I'm not a grown-up. I was doing well enough. I was doing well enough to buy a house. I was doing well enough to buy a house before Slash, at least, that I kind of felt like I could do this myself. But my father came down and sort of like, my father loves an excuse to get away anyway. So he said, hey, I'll help you come down there and sort out a house. And I'm like, great, thank you. And he came down, and we looked at this house. I was getting ready to close on it, and I went to Chili's, which is always funny for my Canadian dad because I think ketchup is too spicy for my dad. But, I'm just sitting there, and my phone rings, and I pick it up, and it's Brent Fitz, and he goes, "Hey man, can you be in LA tomorrow at the rehearsal space we rehearse at by noon or 1 or something like that?" I go, "Yeah, sure." He put it to me like, "Do you want to come jam?" I remember like, and at the time, the Sin City Sinners was this jam band. Like it was like, so that the idea of jamming to me didn't really kind of go like audition. I was just sort of like, yeah, dude, yeah. Like George Lynch is coming to town. We're going to jam with him with the Sinners, or Slim Jim Phantom from the Stray Cats, or any number of people would come to town and we would jam. And so I said, of course. I didn't go over any music. I literally threw my Fender P, which is right there, and an Ampeg, threw it in the car. And I remember I was on the phone with Fitz, and I looked at my dad across the table. I go, "You want to go to LA tomorrow?" And he goes, "I've never been to LA." I go, "Well, that's decision enough." I think I actually had a flip phone too. That's how long ago that was.
Nice. Nice.
And so, yeah, we went out there, and that was it. And in fact, Slash did not want me to leave. It was sort of like, I was like, whoa. I was really sunk in stuff here in Vegas. Like I had a lot of stuff going on. We were like really successful working band in Vegas. And I was like, I got to go back for the weekend and do my weekend gigs. I can't just hang out here. Because he was literally like, okay, so then on Thursday we got to do Jay Leno. And I was like, whoa, what's going on here? And it was a whirlwind after that, just like a complete whirlwind. Like I just kind of.
I remember watching that performance when it happened, because you guys played back to Cali, if I'm not mistaken.
On Leno, we played By the Sword with Andrew Stockdale from.
Okay, well,
But we played.
Maybe was it Lopez Tonight? You guys.
It was either Lopez or the Craig Ferguson.
I think it was Lopez Tonight that you guys did back to Cali.
We definitely did it there. Yeah. We did 2 nights on George Lopez's show, Lopez Tonight, at the time, which was a very popular show at the time. I think it got eaten up by Conan going to TBS. I can't remember how that worked.
And they also tried bringing back Arsenio Hall's show on TV. I think that was on TBS as well, right around that time.
Yeah, that's right. I remember that too. Yeah, I don't think we got a call on that, but anyway, we did 2 nights. We did one night. I don't
think that lasted very long.
No, I don't think so either. One night we did By the Sword. The second night we did Back from Cali with Myles. Because it was funny, because we were rehearsing a bunch, and Myles Kennedy was going to be the singer. Myles Kennedy. I'm like, and we were rehearsing with Andrew a bunch for appearances. We did a music video for By the Sword. Lemmy came down to rehearse, which was like, it was as if Lemmy walked into the room. And we did the Golden Gods Awards together. And so we did all that.
With Dave Grohl playing drums on that. That is hands down one of the best fucking videos of all time, is that video of them playing Ace of Spades.
Dude, he was super psyched to be there too. I remember it just being such a whirlwind. Like Grohl was just kind of like super psyched to play, Ace of Spades with the guys. And all
you could tell with his energy on that, man. He was fucking going nuts on that.
I know. He is such a monster drummer and a great human. Like he was really cool and like really hung out with us the whole day from sound check and his wife came down. It was really cool. It was a very, very, really crazy day because I remember standing there at one point and we were in this dressing room together. I think Chris Jericho was there. I get them mixed up because we've done a few of those, but it's definitely on the first one where we had just done Leno recently before that. And Rob Halford from Judas Priest was there. And he goes, and this friend of mine who's a publicist goes, have you met, and I was a massive Priest fan as a kid. Like I was like, oh, wow. And then I'm just kind of standing there. I didn't even see Rob there. And it was like, hey, have you met Rob Halford? I'm like, oh, shit, and Rob goes, you guys sounded great the other night on Leno. And I was like, Rob Halford saw me playing on TV.
That's fucking awesome.
Yeah, so it was pretty...
Halford who introduced you guys, right, at the Golden Gods. I'm pretty sure. I'm pretty sure Halford, because he was like, it's Slash, and he's brought a hell of a bunch of guys with him tonight. I'm almost positive Halford was the one emceeing that one.
You're probably right. It's such a blur. I honestly that whole.
It's not period, like I'm a fanboy or something. I mean, look at all this shit I got sitting behind me.
That whole period is such a blur, like that. Me getting to LA and just like, and then, even having that feeling of like, well, does this mean I'm leaving Vegas? Which I never ended up doing. I've always remained in Vegas, but yeah, it was a real whirlwind. And I like at the time, I was never sure if this was just going to be like a few weekends of flying out and promoting this album and then the end and go back to life, or like 3 months or something like that. I mean, we went to Australia for an MTV thing.
Which was great. I think I told you that was like, that was kind of my first experience getting to see Slash play some of those songs like Night Train and all that shit live. Because it had been 15 years since he'd done a lot of those songs. So
absolutely,
the Australian MTV launch, that was
what it was.
Great. Yeah.
Yeah. And then from there, it was like, there was a warm-up show at the Roxy. Again, it was like the first time I was in the Roxy since I played there in '91. So like, I don't know how many years before that. Mick Mars is sitting in the front in the front booth. You're like, what? Like everything's like a constant you're constantly scratching your head. You're like, what's going on? Why is this happening? But it was such a whirlwind, and like I said, I wasn't sure if it was going to last 3 months or 3 weeks, and then like a year and a half later, it was still going. Like we went not like probably 18 months or something like that. I don't know.
Of course, and kind of jumping back a little, that first jam that you had when you went over to Slash's place and was rehearsing with them, what was that first jam like, man? What were you feeling going into that? I know you had to have a little bit of anxiousness, walking into a rehearsal with a guy of kind of Slash's stature, and what was that? I want to know everything about that first jam that you can tell me.
Well, I don't mean to be too cocky about it, because that's not really the way it is. It's just that I'd really honestly kind of gotten myself to a place, and most of my friends knew me to be the guy that if like, I don't know, if Roger Waters was going to get up and jam, I'd be like, okay, let's go. Like I'm kind of known for being a guy who knows a lot of songs. Zach Throne is one of those guys who's, he makes me feel like I don't know anything, but we are pretty damn good at just kind of like, we could get together right now and fill 2 hours worth of music just with stuff, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, that's things I didn't really go over anything. Like I didn't really think to myself, okay, I should go over. I've just sort of, the Appetite for Destruction album has been downloaded into this since it came out, so It's like, some of the Use Your Illusion stuff is a little more, it's a little more challenging as far as, because it's just so much more of it, but Appetite is just in there, you know what I mean? So I said not that long ago, I said, the only thing I remember jamming was Night Train. I remember walking in there and being like, okay. And I don't remember, like, I wasn't like uber cocky, confident guy. I just sort of felt like I know this, and I know this shit. And there's always that feeling of like, I literally came here to jam. Keep in mind, I didn't like, no one said you're coming down, bring an 8x10. It's like, it wasn't anything like that. It was kind of like, I'm just coming down here to jam. And if it works out, great. If it doesn't, then I've got a lot going on. And so, yeah, I remember doing Night Train, and I remember it being like, okay, let's, and it's sort of like, it immediately turned into Jay Leno and Australia or whatever the hell.
So who was there singing the stuff at that first jam?
I don't think anybody was. That's a good question now that you bring it up, because it would have been, just Fitz and Bobby Schneck and Slash and some crew guys that really
were there. So Bobby was there as well.
Yeah, Bobby.
I was always under the impression from hearing the story that it was just you, Britt, and Slash in there, kind of just running through some stuff.
No. Which later on becomes really the MO. Even now, like recently, it's been, well, not recently, but up to this point, a lot of the time, the three of us are in a room together. But that was specifically, Bobby was definitely there. And Bobby was a big part of that whole initial chapter of things.
Yeah, because, he played on that whole first tour with you guys.
Yeah,
so,
he's on the first live album, the Stoke, Made in Stoke.
Yeah, great album as well. And I know that Slash was, in all the press he did for that, he was always really excited that he got to do an album, where he was born.
Yeah, that was a big deal. And the weird thing about it is I remember we were all kind of like, it's kind of like the night before that gig is like an amazing gig. Then you're recording and you're like, ugh, and then the next day is like, or why didn't they record tonight?
Yeah.
It was always, there's something weird about that kind of feeling of like, you're being recorded tonight. There's like cameras and stuff like
red
moving
light
around.
central.
And you're like, what the hell's, because your whole vibe is totally invaded by this,
You do the same thing with studio recordings too. You'll listen to a playback and you're like, what the fuck was I doing right there?
I know. Where often the demo is has more energy because you're not thinking about it as much. When all of a sudden you're recording it. Yeah.
That Minefield box set in 20 years is going to be fantastic. It'll blow the album out of the water.
Exactly. Tons of GarageBand and Logic and God knows what else we were recording on.
Yeah. So the first time I ever saw Slash play live was on the Let Rock Rule tour when you guys were playing with Aerosmith in Atlanta. Yeah. Are there any experiences that stick out from that tour with Aerosmith for you?
Well, all of them, really. I mean, it's kind of like I've been very fortunate because in Age of Electric, my band back in the 90s in Canada, we'd recorded in the studio with Bob Rock at the very same time that Aerosmith was recording Get a Grip. And, it was just this weird, like, Wayne's World moments of, like, we're not worthy all the time because you were, like, constantly, and they're small people. Like, I'm a tall cat, so I would walk in and I'd be like, I remember just sitting we didn't have a green room, so I would just sit in the lobby of the studio when I wasn't doing or waiting for somebody or whatever, and I was playing this white Falcon, a Gretsch white Falcon that Billy Duffy from The Cult had given to Bob Rock because Bob had produced Sonic Temple and a bunch of records.
Great record.
So I'm just sitting there kind of like strumming along on this thing, and Joe Perry walks out of their little green room and he goes, wow, nice guitar. Is that one of Bob's? And you're just like, don't freak out. That's Joe Perry. And I'm like, yeah. And he comes over and he sits down, like I'm on this couch and he's on this couch, and he just takes it and noodles around on it. He goes, wow, that's a nice guitar. And he hands it back to me. I'm like, what?
I'd have been sitting there like bursting into tears or something.
Yeah, it was so weird. And the weird thing was I ran into him in a mall once in Canada so I had a couple of weird, like, where you kind of, and I was always nice Canadian boy. I don't want to bother anybody. But then on the tour, suddenly things happened. Like, but even going back again to recording, when I was recording with Age of Electric, Steven would just burst into your studio like, hey man, you guys got any tambourines? And you'd be like, because he was never dressed in sweats and a ponytail. He was always Steven Tyler. Like there's always scarves and an
That's
onset
awesome.
of like headbands and things going on. You're like, whoa, oh yeah, here's the tambourine. Well, thanks, man. He would just vanish.
Hey, can we get that back? And
yeah. And then fast forward all these years later, and I remember him coming back we were doing one of the first shows was a festival type outdoor thing somewhere in Ontario, Canada, and we're in like our compound, and just sort of like this thing opens up, and Steven comes in, hey man, gives me a big hug like we're old friends, and I'm like, hello. He doesn't really know. I'd met him I'd met him a few times with our tour manager who had worked for him, especially around the American Idol thing. So it's kind of like I'm sure he knew me to kind of go, there's that tall, he's not Howard Stern, but he's something like that, But yeah, so, I mean, a lot of those experiences just like, the day by day, just kind of like being at an Aerosmith concert every day was, we get to play as well. Like playing the LA Forum was a big deal. Like when you open up your Kiss Alive 2 and you go, this is the LA Forum, and we're standing there and I'm like, whoa, Jim Carrey's on the side of the stage, which I didn't know until somebody pointed that out to me. So it was just a kind of like an ongoing sort of set of experiences, of just this constant feeling of like, we only played every 3 days or something like that too, because Steven takes he sings, he takes a chunk of time off. So we would do gigs in between, but we would often be sometimes, if we didn't have gigs, we would like play a gig and then have 3 days off. And I kind of felt like every time we got on stage, I was rusty. You know, you don't get into that sort of swing of like playing every day. You kind of felt like, oh yeah, right. You know, very, very awesome time though. It was a very exciting time to be doing any of that.
Yeah. And unfortunately, so that, the day of that gig, that was really my first experience ever going to Atlanta. And from anybody that's been to Atlanta knows how fucking terrible the traffic is there.
It can
so
be, yeah.
The show was supposed to start at like 7, and you know, we roll into Atlanta at like 6, and we're like, oh, we got time to go by the hotel, and then we can go to the venue. And our tickets were on like they were on call, so they were waiting for us there. And so we get stuck in fucking traffic and this whole fucking ordeal. And as they're taking the tickets from me, like scanning them there, I can hear like Sweet Child of Mine being played. And I'm like, I've already missed like 75% of the set. And then we make it to the seat, and I got to catch the tail end of Night Train and then all of Paradise City, which was still great. It was fucking awesome. And then, of course, Aerosmith came out there and just blew the roof off the place.
Oh, yeah.
I've still said, to this day, one of the most rock and roll things I've ever seen is Steven Tyler coming up from underneath the stage, playing just a smoke-filled aura, playing Dream On. I was just like, I was like 18, just losing my absolute mind watching that.
Yeah, that's not something you see every day for sure. And if you're going to see Aerosmith, that was a great time to see them because, I mean, they're never not good. They're always amazing. But I will say, every night that we saw them play on that tour was there. Nobody phoned that in. You know?
And the set list was great too. There was such a good mix of everything they were doing. It wasn't just the 80s hits. It wasn't just the 70s hits. They were pulling deep cuts. They actually played my favorite Aerosmith song, hands down, No More, No More. And they played it that night in Atlanta. And I couldn't believe that they were playing it.
Absolutely. I know that was a really great set list they were busting out night after night. And it changed all the time. We would watch them jam in the afternoons. And, you know, and it was like, just watching Aerosmith play, like, you know, sometimes it wasn't all of them either. It'd be like the drum tech or whoever was around. But Steven and Joe would go. Sometimes Brad would be like, oh, okay. Just kind of like, be done. But those guys would just jam. You know, they love
But you guys got Brad to come out at a Conspirators gig and do Walking the Dog with you guys, which I thought was such an awesome choice to do because, you know, out of all the hits you could pull from Aerosmith to do, you guys did Walking the Dog, which isn't even an Aerosmith tune, but
especially considering that Slash is sort of known for, you know, their version of Mamakin and stuff like that too.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of things we could have done, but you're right. It was kind of like they landed on that. I was like, fucking hey, that'd be great.
Yeah, we do that in my 3-piece, and I actually play bass on that one, and it's cool. You know, it's actually surprising how many people know that song because.
Well, there's a Stones version of it. There's multiple versions of it. I don't even remember who is that. Willie Dixon or Muddy? I'm trying to think.
It's Willie Dixon.
Willie Dixon. Sure. Yeah. It's you know it's such a great song, and it's been around forever.
Does the whistling in it.
That's right. Yeah.
Cool. So kind of diving into more, you know, just the personal part of this and, you know, just the what ifs or whatever. So were there any GNR or Velvet Revolver tunes that you guys rehearsed that didn't make their way into the set list?
I don't think so. I think Slash was actually sticking very close to Appetite stuff. The only Use Your Illusion song we were doing at that time was Civil War. He still felt very connected to that. For whatever reason, I think he's always been a little kind of like he thinks that's more for Guns N' Roses to be playing, I guess, like all that material. Even though we eventually did go on to play things like You Could Be Mine and Double Talk and Jive and stuff like that. But you know, but of course he had a lot of other stuff to focus on. There was a lot of the Snake Pit stuff did not get its day in the sun, you know, as much as it should have. So we played quite a bit of both albums, you know, both the Snake Pit albums, and then quite a few Velvet Revolver songs. Nothing off the second album, Contraband. Only off of Contraband, nothing off of Libertad.
Yeah.
So, but it was, but he's not the kind of guy that we jam songs that we don't play. Honestly, he's always been pretty big on having sort of a rotating sort of idea of like, tonight let's do this instead of that, and so that, you know, because we know when we play, people travel, and he's very big on the idea that these kids, you know, people should see something different tonight than.
Which, of course, he wanted to do double talk and jive if he was going to do any of the illusion stuff because of that monster solo at the end.
Of course.
I say if there's two songs that the rest of the guys in my tribute hate playing, it's Double Talk and Jive and Rocket Queen. Because Double Talk and Jive, of course, it's just, you know, those two notes. It's
more solo than song, really.
Yeah, and especially Rocket Queen, when you bust into that, and we do it the same way that he does it with all his groups, where you just stick on the E riff.
On the groove, yeah.
For like 15 fucking minutes.
Well, as you know, and I've pointed out to you, we do you can go to YouTube right now and find a 30-minute version we did in Paris once. And I keep saying to you, I go, Rocket Queen, when I look at the listing on the album, is a 6-minute song. So that means 24 minutes of what we did was guitar solo.
Yeah.
And, you know, there's a lot of people, you know, on occasion I would see people like being really negative about all the guitar solos. I'm like, you're going to a show.
Yeah, it's a Slash show. What the fuck are you wanting?
I'm kind of like, you're going to a show. It'd be like going to like, you know, Miles Davis. There was a lot of trumpet.
Yeah.
It's fucking Miles Davis, dude. And so to me, it was kind of like, yeah, you know, it's, you know, I was just talking about this the other day, how like I'd call up these Beatles songs. I remember saying to somebody like, these songs aren't even 3 minutes long. And they were like, no, there's no way. Those songs got to be 3.5 minutes long. I go, dude, Hard Day's Night, every single song I called up was about 2.5 minutes long, maybe 2.25 or 2 3/4. And I was like, these songs are there's a lot happening under 3 minutes, you know. But then like within a few albums, you know, by Abbey Road, the Beatles themselves are like, you know, playing She's So Heavy, you know, it's like long jams and stuff like that. It's just the nature of Cream and Hendrix and Zeppelin, you know, they just got into these jams, and I always dug that. I love the fact that as a kid I'd pull out the Song Remains the Same album, the live album, and I go, the whole side of this album,
Dazed and Confused.
Dazed and Confused was the one side of the record was Dazed and Confused. And I was like, who does one song on an entire side of the album? Led Zeppelin does. I wasn't mad at that.
Oh, that's great. So if there were any song you can pull from either catalog, the GNR catalog or the Velvet Revolver catalog, that you didn't play, what would it be?
Well, it's funny because we did threaten a few things like Garden of Eden. I think I talked to you about that once, about how I remember like...
Actually, I do remember that. I think that was on the Illusion episode that we did.
Yeah. Because I remember that was the one where Miles looked at me and he went like, you can sing that. Because when you go and I go, well, fuck, hell yeah, I'll sing that song
with pleasure.
and then I listen to it and it's like nigga down, nigga. You know, his like lyrics are just like that bouncing ball in the video. It's like, oh my god, I don't think I could do it. But it never really kind of came to me. Perfect Crime was always one I always wanted to play.
The production on that song is just so awesome. The way that when he says perfect at the end of that first chorus, it just jumps like right in your face. It's awesome.
And I don't think Guns have been playing it, if I remember correctly. I don't think they've been playing it.
That's always a big thing. It's
a big thing. Is because on the last run of the Conspirators, he is very bold that way. He's kind of like, you know, let's just do Night Train. And I was kind of, you know, just as like a crowd pleasing kind of like, you know, make everybody happy kind of guy. I'm like, are you sure? Just one Guns N' Roses song? He's like, yeah. You know, he's very confident, and they're like, Guns are back. Guns are playing Guns songs, so we'll just do what we do. And I'm like,
it makes sense, because that was kind of the cool thing when the Conspirators first started up, was that you could go see Slash playing these songs that you hadn't got to see him play in any capacity in a long time. And now that GNR's back, and they're playing all the fucking time when COVID's not a thing. So
exactly,
you have plenty of opportunities to go see him play those songs. Not taking away how good you guys play those songs. But you know, it makes sense. And you guys have a huge catalog now as well with the Conspirators. So
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
It's not like you guys are short on material.
No, it was like 3 albums plus the one Slash solo album with Miles and Lemmy and
I will say this, how crazy is it, and I want to know your opinion on this, that they're doing Slither in the GNR set. How awesome is that, man?
That was so rad. I mean, I know it was because Scott passed away that they sort of like landed on that. I mean, I don't know if you would go to the Guns shows and they would be doing like Wichita Lineman because Glenn
Black
Campbell
Hole
passed
Sun
away.
as well.
Black Hole Sun for Chris, and then yeah, Slither made sense because of course, you know, the other two guys in Guns now had a band called Velvet Revolver, you know, and had a lot of hit songs, you know, and a really, that first album especially, I saw Velvet on that first tour, and it was great, man.
That first album is just awesome, man.
It is, yeah.
A lot of good rock and roll on that. And
Absolutely.
I loved that you guys did Sucker Train Blues for a while in the Conspiracy.
That's my favorite Velvet song. Yeah,
dude, it's so awesome.
Yeah,
you know, you got that classic Duff bass in the intro, and
always, yeah, Duff's always on the dusty end of the guitar. He's always on. Who plays up here? Only Duff. Yeah,
all high end.
He loves going up there. Yeah, it's like, you know, like It's So Easy, those kind of things. He's always.
They'll say, well, Sucker Train Blues is like It's So Easy for the Velvet Revolver catalog.
Totally, 100%.
I was gonna say, man, out of the other Velvet Revolver songs, one that I would like to see them maybe replace Slither with, now that they've done it a bunch. I've always wanted to hear Axl sing "Fall to Pieces."
That'd be amazing, actually. Yeah.
Yeah, just that chorus. I feel like he could do that chorus really good justice.
He would, yeah. That's a great song.
When I saw them at Louder Than Life, though, that was one of my highlights of the show, was them doing Slither. I was just like, yeah, because I never got to see Velvet Revolver, so I was like, this is awesome.
That's a great song.
If 10 years ago you could have told people that not only Guns N' Roses would be back together, but they're playing Velvet Revolver songs, be like,
no one would believe it.
Out of here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, to be fair, Slash is playing, you know, Slash and Duff are playing Chinese Democracy songs, so it only seems to be like.
I mean, if you would have them playing Chinese Democracy material being back in Guns N' Roses makes more sense than fathoming them doing Velvet Revolver stuff.
Exactly.
For being honest about it. So,
absolutely.
And I love the way they play those songs. Better is a fucking killer track, man. As much as everybody, you know, talks about Chinese Democracy not being a GNR record and it being kind of weak, Better is a fantastic rock and roll song.
I've always liked that song. Liked that song. It's great, yeah.
Yeah, and I love the kind of little intro they wrote for it with this lineup to go into it. It's just killer. So
totally
hearing Slash's solos on those songs brings a whole new life to them. And that song actually Better, you know, hearing the second solo on the record, I was like, man, that sounds like a Slash solo.
Totally.
So it was nice getting to hear him actually, you know, kind of.
Do you know who that was on the record? I don't even know who.
It was Robin Fink, I'm pretty sure.
Robin played on that? Yeah.
Playing the second solo. Because the first one's Bumblefoot, the crazy-ass solo.
Yeah, right, yeah. Yeah, that's a very Bumblefoot solo.
Yeah, which, I mean, he's planted his seed all over that album when you hear it.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely, yeah.
Which it's such a weird pairing, you know, to go back and watch those, like, 01, 02, and 03 Rockin' Rios. Well, not 03 because they didn't play that year, but the 01 and 02 Rockin' Rios.
That's right, yeah.
They were going to do 03, and they were going to be the first band ever to do it 3 years in a row, and that's when Buckethead left. Like,
that's right, yeah.
That happened, but
Bumblefoot and I just played together on that new Ellefson record.
Yeah,
I've never met Bumblefoot before, and we're like both playing on that version of that Sweet Song that we do, and it's great. It's like really such a great tune. Yeah.
Yeah, and loved the interview you did with Ellefson. He seems like he's
a wonderful guy. Yeah. I've known him for years. He's another guy that came out and jammed with the Sinners. When we talk about, like, you know, jamming with people, it was like, Dave Ellefson from Megadeth is here. Like, what? Okay, let's do this. Yeah.
Yeah. Who was I talking to the other day? Shit. I can't remember. But Sin City Sinners, you guys, I think it was Brent Muscat when I was talking to him.
Right.
Tracy and Phil, the first time they had played together in a long time.
That's right.
At a Sin City Sinners show.
Yeah, that was the kind of atmosphere that was created in those kind of, those kind of Vegas nights. Was, you know,
as Brent was like, if anybody's responsible for getting those two back together, it's the Sin City Sinners.
Yeah, I wouldn't disagree with that. Yeah, and Muscat's known those guys since back in the day. So yeah.
Well, he was in LA Guns for a brief period as well.
He was, yeah.
As a couple people were. So.
Yeah, that's true. It's got Spinal Tap level of members that have kind of come and gone.
Yeah, but I mean, man, my whole view on that whole thing is I'll never complain about having more good music to listen to. So if there's two bands, I'm gonna listen to both bands because that's just double the LA Guns you get to listen to, man. So
it's kind of how I feel about it. Is like it's none of my business. I just kind of like if there's good music coming out, then I guess we can enjoy that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, of course.
That's all that matters.
So kind of branching off of the Slash thing a little bit, you play with Raid in the Rock Vault. So
I have, yes.
You get to play with a lot of awesome people in that, man, and just do a whole wide array of just awesome rock songs. How did that gig come about?
That's been around forever. And it's funny that, you know, another one that we should take some responsibility for was Blas Elias, who was from Slaughter.
Slaughter, yeah.
But he was doing like the Blue Man Group thing for a million years. And then one day we were like, Blas, come play with us. And we were always sort of hassling him. Blas, you know, he'd show up. He was hard to miss because he looks exactly like Blas Elias from Slaughter. He still looks exactly the same as he did 20, 30 years ago. And then one day he was like, okay, I'll come play. Because we wouldn't just have people get up and jam. We would kind of like, we'll do, you know, Fly to the Angels. We'll do Up All Night. We'll do some Slaughter songs. And then, you know, whatever else, you know, Zeppelin, AC/DC, we'll just get up and we'll play like a set together. So he got up and he didn't admit it to me until not that long ago, where he was sort of like, I hadn't played rock. I've been doing this kind of tribal-y kind of Blue Man thing for so long that I hadn't played rock in a long time. And that was one of the first nights I'd gotten back. And I go, really? Because you knew you would never know. He's always like, oh, I was terrible that night. Like, oh, give me a break. Everybody always says that about themselves. And but then, you know, of course, going on years later and playing with him and things like Raid in the Rock Vault. But Raid in the Rock Vault was like was established as a show around Vegas. And it had come up multiple times in my life, but I was always busy and I was always away. And then one period I was just between World on Fire and Living the Dream. I was just sort of here and just sort of, there was a trip. They were doing some shows in Branson, Missouri. Do you want to come out and play? It's Hugh McDonald from Bon Jovi, who I love.
Matt Starr was with them at that time.
Matt was playing drums in that. So that's how we kind of connected. Rowan Robertson from Dio, who I love. I think he was out on that trip. I think he must have been. Who else was on that? Anyway, a bunch of us just kind of went out there, and Paul Trudeau from Billy Idol's band was playing keyboards, and
nice.
It was just one of those kind of, I'm kind of, what is this? Like I was kind of like largely, what are we playing? Oh, cool. Yeah, I know all those songs. Yeah. And as most people know, I played bass with Slash. I was the lead singer, guitar player in Toque and Sinners and all that kind of stuff. And then in this thing, it was just like they wanted me just to come and sing because they had all these, you know, guys like Hugh playing bass and Rowan and whoever else, Howard Leese or somebody playing guitar. And I was like, yeah, I mean, it sounds like a blast. And there's like multiple singers, and you just come out and sing a song, and then you go and, you know, sip on your beverage and then just kind of watch the next guy, and you go back singing another song. It was really fun. I mean, it's again one of those kind of Vegas things. And it took me a while to wrap my head around the idea of like being a musician who lives in Vegas, and it's kind of like a job. Like, you know, okay, so at 7 o'clock I drive over there, we, you know, do a sound check, we play a show, and then I come home, you know, and it's the weirdest sort of like, you get to sleep in your own bed, and that's what all my friends in Vegas do, whether it's a showroom or, you know, backing up a magician or something. It's like whatever they do, they just kind of like, then they come home. And so I kind of like doing that once in a while. And that's kind of one of the big reasons I live in Vegas is that sort of, there's always going to be, well, you know, until currently, obviously, but there's always music to do. And in hopes that eventually, you know, you don't have to retire. You just come here and you play. I got to go to work, honey. You know?
Yeah, that was something that Brent had mentioned. He was like, you know, he was talking about how he actually had more work staying in Vegas, you know, than going out on the road for a month or two. He's like, it kind of made more sense to just hang out in Vegas.
I think, you know, and when I first came down here, Muscat was also sort of just sort of new to the whole scene too. And he was sort of like anybody was kind of like, yeah, let's go to Europe with Fast Pussycat or whatever we were doing. And we came back here and realized, man, it's just sitting here. There's just this big jugular out for us just to bite into, you know, and like, you know, and that basically was what it was for about 3 years. It was like just playing around Vegas and, you know, coming home, you know, and chilling, and I didn't have to. And that sort of when in between records with Slash, it's sort of like I'm doing Toque, I'm doing this, I'm doing that.
You're always staying busy with something.
Yeah, and then Radiant and Rockfall kind of presents itself. You're like, yeah, this sounds like fun, you know. And it's all based around the idea of, you know, it's always the same thing. Is it fun? Do you love the people? Does it pay really well? Is it really good for your career? Like, there's multiple reasons to do a gig. You're lucky if all those things line up. Like, well, it pays really well, and I love these people. But I'm not really the kind of guy who makes the decision based on money. Like, I very rarely take a gig just because it pays well. If it pays well and it's a nightmare, I'm like not interested at all. You know what I mean?
So why are you doing Minefield then? No, I'm just.
Well, that's funny that you bring that up, because that's another one of those examples of somebody, you know, like somebody I love and trust, like the guys from the Ace Frehley band reaching out and vouching. You know, you kind of go, you know, it's also what's going on in your life, because, you know, there's very, you know, there's very many times in your life where some opportunity will come up and you'll be like, I just can't do it. I'm too busy, you know. But sitting around with my feet up during COVID was kind of like, what is this? That sounds like fun. Let's hear a track. And then it's like, you know,
thank
that
God.
first track, yeah, I know. That first track turns into Home. The second track, I think, was Seventh Heaven. That's going to be the third single. And, you know, so like just a lot of those songs kind of, it just was really good, you know, and I really like, this is really fun. Let's just keep doing this. And like you said, like we said before, it was, I think it started as a song and then maybe turned into another song. Who's playing bass on this? Well, I'll play bass on it.
And originally, Jeremy wasn't going to be on the track I was going to have you on either. So, because the whole idea was just having a bunch of different people on all these songs,
That's
you know,
right.
kind of, because my idea was, you know, if I have all these different people on a track or something like that, that is a very wide demographic of people, because each of those people, each of their fan bases will be interested in this album, you know. So, but then, you know, we started working on those couple of songs, and it's like, let's just do this whole fucking album. And, you know, now it's kind of turned into this whole monster that it has, and luckily people are receiving it as well as it seems to be going.
Well, it is fascinating that like as if it was sort of some grand design, but I think some of the best things ever are never sort of, you know, they're never, we're going to do this and he's going to do that. And, you know, it's sort of like, it just
literally, if there's a definition of just a snowball effect, it is Minefield. It's exactly what that is, because it's still, you know, it's changing daily, you know, just it's that snowball keeps getting bigger. And, you know, thankfully Golden Robot is working their asses off, you know, in the PR department and just everything they're doing for us. So, you know, I'm very excited to see how everything kind of takes fold here in the near future with all of this.
I mean, that's the beauty of all of this is it's, you know, I've been around a long time, you know, and it's always sort of like, you know, it's great for me to get the, to catch the excitement from your own perspective. Because for you, a lot of this is kind of like, you remind me of me when I was like, isn't this great? And you just don't want to be that grizzled old guy who's like, when's lunch? You know, kind of like, when can I go home? You know,
how do I mute the notifications on my phone? Real quick.
And I'm not that guy. Like, I really am still that guy who's like, this is awesome. Let's do this. Isn't this fun? You know, and I think that that's the beauty of music, is it sort of forces you to be young in a way. You know, it's sort of, as long as you're lucky enough to catch the wave of just riding it into just being lucky enough to keep doing it. You know what I mean? Because eventually you get to a point where you hope you get to a point, you don't get to a point where your health or whatever keeps you from being able to do this kind of stuff. So when this all comes along, it's like, that sounds fun. Yeah, let's do that. And everything's based around, that sounds fun. Not like, you don't really, I don't spend a whole lot of time thinking about like, well, what's the bigger picture on this? And you just kind of go, look, it's music and we love making music. So and I've always been this way, like I'm the kind of person that doesn't really faze me if someone doesn't like your music or your record isn't selling as well as that guy's record. You're kind of like, look, dude, it's like everything is so, you know, arbitrary and weird, and you don't know what's going to be successful, what's not going to be successful. And you can put a great deal of work, and I have put you know, a mega amount of work into something that seems like a slam dunk, and it's not. And then I've had other things that I've just kind of like, done because I love them. My 2010 solo album is like an album that, you know, it didn't really sell that many records, and it was, but I did it because I wanted to do it and I loved it. We just kind of had a moment making those songs, and a lot of those songs are still the songs that people come out to me and they love those songs. I'm like, you know, if I get hit by a bus tomorrow, it's always a bus. You notice it when you know, you kind of think to yourself, well, you know, there's a lot of people who kind of like, they're very careful and very particular about what they're going to do. Well, what about this? And I'm kind of like, I've always been pretty like, yeah, let's do that, you know, and knowing that if I get hit by a bus tomorrow, it's like, oh, you know, then that's when all of a sudden, have you heard this Minefield stuff? You know, or, you know, or any number of other things that I've done. And it's kind of like,
which one of the band members are we sacrificing to boost the career?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Sorry, Jeremy.
Yeah, he had a good run. We can't use
Jeremy. We can't use Jeremy. He just had another kid. So.
Yeah, he just had another. He needs to stick around. Yeah.
What's Matt doing? Yeah.
But I mean, that's the beauty of it. Is you never know. You make music, you put it out there, and hopefully people like it. And if they don't, then
you know,
make some more. You know?
This whole thing is all very exciting to me. And, you know, I tell you guys how grateful I am to be working with all you on this project. And, you know, for me, it's like, I now have a project that literally, besides myself, the band consists of members only from my two favorite guitarist bands currently, like Ace Frehley and Slash, hands down my two favorite guitarists. Now I have a project that only features guys from their band, you know, speaking from a personal level, that's a very exciting thing. And, you know,
it is. Yeah. It's like 1 degree of separation from those guys for you.
Yeah. And it's, you know, growing up, it's like the two things I always wanted were a record deal and I wanted an endorsement from a guitar company. And I ended up getting both of those on the exact same day. And
that's so cool. Yeah.
We always talk about, you know, Jeremy and Phil and Ryan and them kind of winning the KISS lottery. But 100%. I kind of think of that in the same sense for myself. It's like, how many fucking people can say that they constructed a band out of their two favorite guitarist band members?
Well, I mean, it's, you know, it's exciting because I think a lot of people, I think I've talked about this with a lot of my friends who are working musicians, how they sort of like opportunities kind of just go away because people don't think of you. When an opportunity comes up, they don't go, let's call Todd. They immediately go, Todd's not in their frame of reference because Todd's in Slash's band. They don't put together that Slash has been doing Guns N' Roses for the last year. And I'm doing a whole bunch of other things that I love doing. But so when someone has the wherewithal to reach out to people like Jeremy and Matt and myself and go, hey, you guys want to do this thing? It's kind of like, yeah, it sounds like fun. You know, it doesn't mean that, you know, everybody should reach out and call because we're all busy guys.
Everybody, here's Todd's cell phone number. Hit it up right now. Yeah.
Well, I mean, that's the thing is I'm one of those guys that I am sort of, you know, I am pretty like, if I can make it work and it's fun and we can make it happen, I am the kind of guy that goes, yeah, let's try and do that. But, you know, it doesn't mean that I do anything. I'm kind of like, you know, I am very busy and, but it just happened to be the moment when Minefield came into my life was like everybody else going, yeah, I should be doing more recording from home. I should try and I haven't been writing songs lately because of the way things were. And I was like, and you came along and sort of like lit a fire under me to kind of go. And I remember like having this moment of like, after we would write these songs, I'd kind of feel like, hey, I can still do this. You know what I mean? That doesn't mean that they're platinum selling, you know, on a Transformers movie soundtrack or anything like that. But it's kind of like, not yet, exactly. But the sky is the limit. And there's always, you know, all that stuff about opportunities, you know, when you talk about, you know, it's really easy to say no. You know, it's always easy to go, nah. But I've always been pretty good about like, and there's a lot of things that I've done that, you know, like acting and things like that when I was younger. And I was like, I wasn't any good at it, but when people came at me with like things like that, there was, you know, that your instinct is like, no, and I just kind of would go like, yeah, all right, let's try that, you know, and you know, you kind of come out the other side of it going, well, it wasn't really for me. This is still my number one love is this, you know, but you know, it's sort of, I'm pretty good at trying things, you know, and I've done a lot of different things. And that's why I like to think that all the different projects that I do each have their sort of like there's similarities to them, obviously, but I think that there's very notable
They each have their own
differences
place.
as well.
Yeah.
I think so, yeah.
And, you know, kind of touching on me and you connecting, I was kind of surprised at how receptive you were initially when that first day we talked. So anybody that's not heard this story, the first time I called you was when I was driving to Detroit, and I was driving through like a tornado, no shit, in like the middle of Ohio.
That, yeah.
And
I was sitting right in here, yeah.
The first like 4 times I tried calling you, as soon as you would say hello, the call would get dropped. And it happened like 4 times in a row. And I just remember after like the last time it happened being like, I blew it. I was like, this is fucking it. That was the worst thing that could have happened. And it did. And then of course we ended up talking later on in that ride, and everybody.
Well, it wasn't, yeah.
Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, you know, I was receptive to it because I think, you know, again, Matt I'd known for quite a while, from multiple, you know, we'd done some other recording projects together. And then we did that run in the Raiding the Rock Vault together. And then, of course, I knew Jeremy from the Ace Frehley stuff. He played with Fitz and with Gene Simmons and all that kind of stuff. So when they call and they've got, you know, when guys you respect and dig and love call and they have something cooking, you immediately are more receptive to it. Yeah, I don't know, you know, if these opportunities really arise, if you're able to get a hold of me in any other fashion. You know, that's really, you know, the kind of thing where you go, yeah, I'd love to do some of these guys because I love those guys. And then you just happen to be, you know, sort in many ways, the sort of the nucleus of the entire thing. The only one that's really dealt with any of the individuals. I think Jeremy's the only one that knows us all as actually spent time.
Jeremy's the only one of the 3 of us that has actually been in the same room as all 3 of us. So
you've never actually been with Matt. No, you've met Matt. I'm sorry, you have met Matt.
It's a funny story. I did meet Matt very briefly backstage at
Ace Frehley show.
Yeah, they played in. They were playing in Whitesburg, Kentucky, which I'm sure you don't know, but Whitesburg is like the middle of fucking nowhere. The fact when I saw Whitesburg pop up on Ace Frehley's schedule, I was like, it blew my mind. And then of course
you're like, I got to go there.
Yeah, I reached out to Jeremy and I was like, hey, dude, I totally plan on being at this gig. And it's funny talking about Matt. So after the gig, Matt was kind of standing over towards the trailer with him and Phil were standing there. And I had also never met Phil at this point either. And
okay, wow.
So Jeremy, I had been standing there talking to him, and Jeremy had to go, you know, finish getting the shit off stage or whatever. And I walk over, you know, just I'd had a few drinks. I wasn't making an ass out of myself or anything, but I had the confidence enough to walk up to him. And I just walked up and said hey to Phil and was like, great show. And I looked at Matt, and as soon as I started talking to Matt, I was like, hey man, that was a fantastic show. And Matt shook my hand. One of the security guards was like, why don't you go back over there and hang out with Jeremy? And it's always funny. I bring that up now to Matt occasionally just because it's funny how we're doing this now. But the first time I ever met him, security kind of shooed me away a little.
Mr. Starr needs his room.
He's just aide. He puts the star in Matt Starr. So
of course he does. Yeah.
And Matt's a fantastic guy as well. So
he's an amazing guy. Yeah. An amazing player too. So yeah, it's one of those things where you know, it's just one of those opportunities where, you know, when people talk to me, they're always kind of, what's going on? Like, you know, they sound like every day, and I do all 4 bands or 5 bands or however many there are, and do it all day long every day. I'm kind of like, no, there are 365 days in a year, you know, 52 weeks or whatever you want to call it. And some of those weeks, you know, when this last thing is on, it's on. And it's kind of hard to do almost anything else for during the recording process or during the touring process, but there's time in between things. And I've always been a writer, you know, I've always been a performer, I've always been a singer. So those things have to have their outlets as well. So, you know, those different things. So it's like when you listen to something like Toque that I do, there's kind of like more poppy side and a lot of keyboards and a whole other thing, that 80s thing that we love. And then Minefield is a guitar rock, you know, very guitar rock. And it's really indulging things that I don't, that I've always been capable of doing, but I don't indulge enough, like the song Seventh Heaven, that's going to be the 3rd single, I think. I don't know.
No, it is.
You know more about this.
No.
And it's like way more of like an AC/DC song, or like a really like throw down rock song. And I'm screaming at the top of my lungs, and it's like, I've always been able to do that, or I've always loved doing that. It's just not normally what I do. When I open my mouth and start singing, it's not, the first thing that comes to mind. But for whatever reason, you sent that music over, and it was like, this is what this needs. And I think that scratches an itch that I don't scratch in any of these other projects. Like, I do acoustic shows, I make acoustic records where it's just me and a guitar, and that's another Johnny Cash side of myself that I do as well. So it's all these different elements that I get to do, and I feel very fortunate to do so.
Well, that was kind of my one of my mindsets when I was first about to reach out to you before all of this started. I was like, nobody's ever really taken advantage of Todd's vocals ability in this capacity, like you were saying, because, you do sing in various projects, but as far as the kind of music that's on this record, there from your catalog, there's not much really else like that in it. And I don't mean that in a bad way, obviously. It's just, as far as like the hard rockness stuff goes, there wasn't a lot of, Todd Kerns to be delved into as far as you being featured as a vocalist.
Well, and it is weird because in the Slash show, it'd be like, Myles was on a nightly basis would be like, just let Todd sing a couple songs, and those would turn into, You're Crazy from, the Appetite version, which is like screaming, it's kind of like, yeah. And I think people were always surprised to kind of like when the other guy steps up to sing, you're always kind of expecting it to be like time to go get popcorn or or whatever, But, and I, would do Jungle. Slash would be like, let's do Welcome to Jungle. I'd be like, are you sure?
Yeah, and that's got to be such a great honor to be singing those songs like Welcome to the Jungle in that set.
And we would do Out to Get Me, songs like that. So, like the really hard-hitting, high-screaming Axl songs.
Which you guys did by Michelle as well, and Myles sang that one, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I want to say that maybe he might have thrown that at me at first, and I was like, no, Myles should sing that or something. I've always been, Myles has always been really good to me that way. Like, oh, go sing, like whatever. He's happy to take a break. Although I would think that half-hour versions of Rocket Queen is kind of a break. But, so I mean, like you're right. When I think about my catalog, which is a grotesque word, it sounds so professional. People don't really, like, when I go back to my recordings, it's like I'm not usually screaming in that voice that I can. I just sort of, a lot of my stuff comes from the 90s, was a totally different time. And then, having the ability to do that kind of stuff, it's been a fun card to pull out of my deck and go, boom, like, let's do this. So people will, people don't know what we're talking about. When the next single comes out, they'll be like, oh, okay, I see what he's talking about.
Of course. So there's a couple things I want to touch on quickly before we get out of here.
Sure.
These aren't things that, that we can delve into for, the next hour or two. But so it's pretty known on social media at the moment. You guys are working on a new record in the Slash camp. Where are you guys at exactly in that process right now?
Super early days, honestly. It's been like, it's always weird because, this process, or the way things have been, has made it even more difficult than it usually is. That we are very fractured. It is, for all intents and purposes, a project. We've talked about that before. How, is it a band? Is it a project? I go, well, obviously Slash, before Guns N' Roses came back, The Conspirators was 100% all he wanted to do. And in many ways, it's still like a really big priority for him because he gets to do what he wants to do, and he loves making music. And I think it's the same for him. There's 365 days in the year. Guns takes up this much of his time. The rest of his time he wants to fill with something else. So, and there are people who get it and there are people who don't. They wish that, everybody wishes that their favorite band all lived in a house together, like the Monkees, and were best friends. But that's not really the way it realistically works. And everybody kind of makes their agenda work, and they have other projects that they do. Myles has always been in Alter Bridge. That has been, even before Guns N' Roses got back together, that was always on the table. And we always knew, like, it was always kind of like, Myles is going to go back and do a run with Alter Bridge, and we go do other things and then reconvene. We would often be doing things without Myles, putting songs together, that kind of stuff. And it's become more complicated with Guns. Frank's playing with Wolfie.
Which, I saw that the other day. That's fantastic. I had no idea who else was in the band, and when I read that article, I was like, oh, holy shit! I was like, that's great.
Yeah, they've been super tight for as long as they cross paths, which I think started with Wolfie doing a run with Tremonti, playing bass for Mark Tremonti's band Tremonti, and that's very exciting. So and people keep asking me, how's that going to work? I go, well, seeing how no one's playing right now, I really don't know, but I assume it's going to be like everything else. They're going to do a run, and then we'll do this. Everything has a way of kind of seeming way more. It is complicated, but it always has a way of kind of like, and then on this day we all get together and we start this process. So it's like when we talk about making the record, it's very early days. When I say early days, it's like Slash and I, more than the other guys in a lot of ways, because I'm sort of been around, have kind of, come up with a lot of demos and a lot of stuff. And, the other guys have been jamming around, and eventually they'll turn into songs, and they'll, we'll go press record somewhere.
Are you getting to, kind of put your handprint on some of the songwriting on this album?
It's another conversation I always have with people, because it's really funny when you have a guy, when every time I go sit down with Slash and he plugs in his guitar and plays something, I always say, the first thing I say to myself is like, in a year from now, I'm going to watch some kid play that on YouTube. You know what I mean? Like what he just played for me, that riff, because it's always some classic, legendary riff. Just kind of, he made it up on the couch last night.
Yeah.
And so it's always that kind of thing of like, it's a really in-depth conversation about like, Slash has 1 million riffs, and then all he needs is someone like Myles. Well, it's basically Myles comes in and puts lyrics and melodies to it, and those are the songs. My job and the Conspirators' job is a lot more arrangement, feel stuff.
So you are getting to help out with the arrangement on these songs.
Well, essentially, right now it's a lot more in the demo phase. It is what it is. Like we don't really have a vocal to work with, and we don't really kill ourselves thinking like, is this verse too long? It doesn't matter, because it's, when you're kind of like just jamming around, it's sort of like, this is a verse 5, that's a chorus 5. And it's usually Myles who comes in and he sort of has created like, this is how the verse is going to go, pre-chorus, chorus, and that sort of thing. And then you're able to kind of go, okay, now this feels too long, or this is, whatever. And then there's a lot more surgery that can kind of go on, and the surgery goes on till the end. Like in the past, we have been like, just working on songs. Especially the three of us, or now the four of us with Frank, will get the music all together, work it and rework it and tear it apart and put it back together. Then Myles comes in and we rework it and tear it all apart and put it together. And then a producer comes in and we rework it and tear it all apart and put it back together again. So it's this constant evolving type thing. And and it's, to me, it's like, it's really hard for me to kind of like live in a world where Slash is just breaking out, fucking legendary riff after legendary riff, and me going like, what about this? Clank, clank, long, clank, clank, clank. And going like, now there's 1,000,002 riffs, and it's just sort of like, I really feel like we sail under his banner, and it's all built on his stuff, and all I want to do is just sort of help him take that where he needs to see it go. And a big part of that is, it would be different if he looked at me and went, can you write some lyrics and melody to this? You and I do it all the time. We make up Minefield songs all the time. So I'd be like, I'll do it right now, bro. But that I understand that, I've been always very good about going into a situation and going, I'm the bass player in this band. Myles is the lead singer. That's his job. He's actually really fucking good at it.
Yeah.
Coming up with like, turning riffs into, classic great songs. So that's just not my job in this particular arena.
Can we expect maybe a Todd Kerns lead vocal on this next Conspirators record?
That's funny that you say that, because we always kind of joke about it, not joke about it, but it sort of comes up, but it's never really come up yet, because I just don't think the right thing has sort of come down the pipeline. But it's always sort of like you never know. Like I say, I'm perfectly. I kind of feel like back when I talked about my first band where I joined playing bass and I was happy just to be the bass player. I'm in this band. Isn't this great? And then I got made into being the lead singer. I was kind of like, oh, okay.
Which there are releases, the live albums that you sing lead on.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, I've always, it's been amazing to me to watch it kind of go down the way it has. It's been 10 years I've been playing with him, with those guys, and it's to see the change in my life as far as people, digging what I do and following me and showing up at gigs that they never would have known me had I not played with him and played with Myles and played with those guys. So
of course, that's kind of a good segue of one of the last things I wanted to ask you about. So like you said, you've been playing with Slash for 10 years. The only guy who's played bass more with Slash, and honestly, it's probably almost equal at this point, with the amount of shows you've done over the last 10 years, is Duff. Talk to me about the first time you got to meet Duff and what that was like.
It's funny that you say that, because back in '91 when we were hanging around the Hollywood Sunset Strip, that's when I told this story multiple times, but Slash just happened to be at the Rainbow the night we were there and sat down at our table and just sort of, hey, I'm like, well, they were the biggest band on the planet in that moment, especially in our world, and he just sort of just sat down and was just kind of like really engaging and cool and amazing. And we were like, wow, he kind of spoiled it in a lot of ways to meet anybody else, because they're never going to be that awesome. And anytime I brought that story up, Slash is always like, was I nice? And I go, you were, it was better than any experience we could have expected, because everybody's had an experience where, you like somebody and they turn out to be kind of a jerk or whatever. But on that same trip, it was, Duff was always there. We never hung out with him, but he was always there. It wasn't until years later, and I've always been a massive Duff supporter and a massive Duff fan, through Neurotic Outsiders, his Believe in Me solo record, all that kind of stuff.
Believe in Me is great. I love that record.
Yeah. I mean, he's an amazingly talented guy, and in a lot of ways, I don't think he's been able to show everything he can do until the most recent solo album. I think in a lot of ways, even though it's a lot different than what people would, might expect, or what their favorite part of what Duff has done. It says so much about him as an artist. And I think the fact that he's a writer and in incredible shape and has an amazing family.
Duff looks younger now than he did 30 years ago on the Illusion tour.
Yeah, I know. We are lucky to be, that all those guys are still with us, because, they're those, between Duff, Slash, and Steven, those are three guys who we all could have lost,
Yeah.
And they're here and they're stronger than ever, and it's a fascinating thing. So to me, my chat with Duff is happening on Thursday on my YouTube channel, and it's a massive deal. Like, he's always been amazing to me, and I never asked him in any way, shape, or form to give me any preferential treatment. It's just sort of like we've always hit it off. I come from Vancouver, he comes from Seattle, Pacific Northwest punk rock guys. And I always knew Duff to be, all the punk rock guys that I knew in Vancouver, they all seemed to know Duff. And it was always kind of like, are these guys full of shit? Or do they really? And I remember saying to Duff when I first, do you know so-and-so and this guy and that guy? Like, of course, because he was in those punk rock bands that would do that same, circuit all the time. And I was like, and he's just, as successful and huge and awesome as Duff is, he's just one of the most down-to-earth, awesome people. And I mean, we're talking about a guy who doesn't really have to do any of this anymore. I think he's done really well for himself outside of rock and roll, and his writing and everything else.
Yeah.
But he's an amazing guy. He's just an amazing dude. And like I say, he's like one of those guys. It's like when people are always like, as a bass player, I hang my bass real low. I play with a pick. It's from Didi Ramone and Sid Vicious and Nikki Sixx and Paul McCartney, and then Duff McKagan. Those guys are all from that school. And a lot of people would be like, you have to play like this. And I'd be like, why do I got to play like that? I love that guys play like that, but why does everybody have to play like that? Why can't we all, wear whatever kind of pants we want to wear and wear our hair however we want to wear it and play however we want to play? I just always sort of gravitated towards the same guys that Duff kind of came from. And Fitz and I are both really anal about making sure the gun songs are played correctly. Like, we never wanted to go up there and do like, here's a weird jazz version of My Michelle. It's like, nobody wants to hear that. We would be like, this is how this song goes. We're going to play it correctly as possible. You can't help but inject a little bit of yourself because that's just the way it goes.
And it doesn't hurt that you guys are fantastic musicians yourself. One thing that I love about watching Brent Fitz play is that he is always keeping time, man. Even when he's not doing anything, you still see the sticks above his head keeping time. He is, he's like a metronome, literally. And I know people say that about a lot of drummers, but he literally never stops keeping count while he's behind the kit. No. It's fantastic to watch.
No, that's the one thing I will say. Like, I'm not the kind of guy that pats myself on the back on how good a player I am, but I know that Fitz and I together are a force. You know what I mean? When we play as the rhythm section, it's kind of like he's the most reliable drummer I've ever played with, and he's just sort of always there. And he's also a very musical guy. Like, I play guitar, I play bass, you'll see me singing. Fitz plays keyboards, he plays bass, he plays guitar, so we're kind of those guys that kind of like in any given situation, if we jump on stage, you never know which instrument we're going to pick up. So
yeah, and to a lot of people, Toque might have been the first time they ever saw Brent playing anything besides drums. And I remember, I was in high school, but I remember seeing a Blabbermouth article where you guys were playing in Russia or somewhere, and it was talking about how Brent had to fill in on bass. And I remember searching everywhere for footage of that. I was like, what? The drummer was playing bass last night. I got to find footage of that. Never could find any footage of it. So
I think it exists. I have seen it. There's something out there because our drum tech at the time is John Douglas, who used to play a band called Kick Tracy back in the day. But he is the guy who on the more recent Aerosmith shows.
Oh, okay. He filled in for
He was Joey Kramer's tech, and he was filling in for him. So he's an amazing drummer. He's an amazing artist. He painted that picture of Billy Perry on Joe Perry's guitar. And he does all like the ZZ Top drums and all their stage stuff. Anyway, so he happened to be our drum tech. I had a detached retina. It was a whole thing. Shit. It was a whole thing. Dude. We went through a whole trip of Europe where I was dealing with this detached retina, and we landed in Moscow.
Holy shit, man!
Yeah, I had to go to a hospital in Moscow with a translator. This nice lady, and it was a whole thing. And they were kind of like, "Yeah, you should go home." I was like, "Okay." And there was 2 shows in Moscow and St. Petersburg. My first trip to Russia. The night before, I went Red Square, take it in. Wow, is this cool? Go to a restaurant. Next day, I wake up and I'm like, my vision it was not good. So they sent me home, and Fitz was like, we can make this work, because Fitz is nuts. And he goes like, okay, he goes to JD, John Douglas, you're playing drums tonight. So he played drums, Fitz played bass, and they got through the show. It's nuts. Yeah,
that's great. That's a good testament to Fitz's work ethic, and that whole
he's insane.
The whole team. I mean, you talk about guys like you and Fitz and Slash and Myles. All 4 of you guys are always working on something, not people who, just sit around and wait on something to happen. Because, between being an Alter Bridge and the Conspirators, Myles still is pumping out solo albums. So
yeah, I mean,
it's fantastic to see. Some material I would love to see Myles play again is the Citizen Swing stuff. I fucking love that stuff. That is great.
That's awesome. Yeah. I honestly, Myles he's an amazing guy on top of it all. He's just an amazing person. But I'm really glad. He's one of those people who is very aware that, you only get one swing at this thing, and opportunity and momentum has presented itself. And it's like, if you've got something you feel like you should say in a solo album beyond everything else, then I'm like, yeah, dude, you should do that, because it's, we're all going to be dust one day, and it's better to go out there and just, make it all happen and keep creating, keep writing. And that's that, really.
Yeah. So here's some fun little quick fire questions before we wrap this up. I texted you here recently about that article I found where the headline was Todd Kerns wants to play a gig on Tatooine. And when I was trying to find some of the Minefield articles for us to post, Rank your top 3 Star Wars movies real quick.
Oh God, well, I'd have to, yeah. New Hope and Empire would be in there.
Okay.
Jeez. Well, top 3 would probably be the original 3.
Oh wow. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, it's funny because I talk to younger people and it's kind of like talking about Kiss or whatever, where they don't have this sort of roots invested in the initial stuff, because I still have that sort of, as a kid, those films were everything. Like literally everything.
You were at the peak age when that original trilogy came out, so
100%. I mean, that's not to say that I didn't enjoy. I think Rogue One is fantastic. I think
Rogue One has to be one of the best Star Wars related things ever.
I think so. I mean, although Mandalorian is quickly sort of usurping all that stuff.
Yeah, I need to dive into the second season. I haven't started it yet, dude, but
it's so good. They're not films. I mean, it's just hard for me to come from a quality conversation, because the most recent trilogy is full. I have a lot of younger friends who, what are you talking about? And they're like, well, that's an endless conversation.
Yeah, I'm trying to get Corey on here just so we can talk about The Last Jedi. So,
dude, it was rough. It was rough. He'd seen it before me.
That was one of the questions I had on here, was what you thought about The Last Jedi. So there's
elements of The Last Jedi that I think are awesome.
I'm going to go out on a limb and say this, that out of the 3 new movies, The Last Jedi was hands down my favorite one of the new ones.
Interesting.
You get to see so everybody bitches about George Lucas going back and digitally editing everything.
Right.
What do you get? You get Yoda as a fucking puppet in the movie.
Then
you get to see Luke as a just absolute master of the Force. It's like people talk about nothing ever really culminating with Luke Skywalker and all that stuff. It's like, no, in that movie, he is a fucking master of the Force, And
some of those elements are in the prequels as well, with Qui-Gon Jinn and young Obi-Wan Kenobi. Seeing Jedis at their peak ability was cool, because in the earlier trilogy, A New Hope, Empire, Jedi, you're kind of seeing the Jedis as sort of like a forgotten, well, really Luke is kind of like last man standing. The Last Jedi. It all makes sense. But yeah, so to me, it's like, it's the same as when we bitch about, like, when people bitch about, like, we talked about it ourselves, like different bands putting out music and like, oh, they're not, and I'm like, dude, be happy that those guys are still alive, making music, making records, and still doing it. Just enjoy that, man. And I kind of feel the same way about, I'm not sure, I have, different films and stuff that I like more than other films, but I largely walk out of them going like, that's pretty cool. Jedi, is sort of like, there were elements of The Last Jedi and Rise of Skywalker where you're like, but that's me being old and picky, you know what I mean? Because the prequels had as many things where we were like, oh, I don't know, dude. But that was that whole other conversation.
See, I'm a fan of the prequels. I like The Phantom Menace, and Revenge of the Sith is my number 2 movie, hands down. I think Revenge of the Sith is fucking fantastic.
It's been so long for me. Like, I need to go back. Funny enough, during the making of Apocalyptic Love, Slash and I both sort of would sit in the kitchen green room, and for whatever reason, those prequels were on. He goes, I've never seen these before. We just sat and watched, like, they would be on, and we'd go out and do something, come back in and watch more. And I was like,
it's like my dream date, sitting in a room watching Star Wars with Slash. Come on, how much better can you do than that?
And he's not a big sci-fi. I mean, he loves film and he loves horror.
Yeah, the horror film. He started his own production company, so.
Yeah. But I mean, sci-fi. He likes good sci-fi, and he just doesn't get other sci-fi. So and I'm that way with horror. I love good horror. I just, some of them kind of like fast forward, like, this isn't that great, but that's just who I am.
Of course.
But
okay.
Yeah,
Oh, well, sorry, didn't mean to cut you off.
I was just going to say, the Star Wars conversation is a very, very long one, and for me, it's sort of like,
we got to do a Star Wars episode sometime. So
it's like pizza largely. It's kind of like, this isn't the best pizza I've ever had, but it's still pizza.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I'm happy.
Okay. If you could go on tour with the Conspirators right now and play Apocalyptic Love, World on Fire, or Living the Dream in its entirety, which record do you want to do?
I think World on Fire. It's funny because we talk about this a lot, like, and I've gone through different periods where I'm not the kind of guy who sits around listening to anything that I've done, but sometimes on a drive, stuff will just kind of come up. And Apocalyptic Love is a really fun listen for me because a lot of that record we did pretty live off the floor. You'll see there's an interview where Slash says, and Todd didn't make any mistakes. And I'm like, what the fuck are you talking about? I go, I just don't think, I think I'm better at kind of covering up whatever I've done. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But in the making of that record, there was a lot of like, we rehearsed the shit out of it and then went in and recorded it pretty live, and then the vocals were kind of done after. But Slash was playing solos live off the floor and stuff like that too.
That's great.
And that's how he likes to work best. In fact, I think in the future, I think that's kind of where he would love to go. But for whatever reason, World on Fire, I guess because, I don't know, it just felt like, it was the second one. It felt like we were definitely a band by that point. Even though Frank's not on the record. It just felt like, I guess because it's long. It's like 17 songs.
Yeah, it's a very long record.
Yeah, and there's something about, there was something about hearing, I remember like one of the last songs I sang on, because it's funny, I've said this before, I'm always there from the very beginning right to the very end of the making of a record because of, I'm there from the, the beginning of the rehearsing of putting the arranging and all together, and I'm there all the way, because Myles has to sing all his stuff, then he's gone, and I come in and I sing all the harmonies. And other guys are done. The solos are done. Everything's done. I'm usually there by myself. I mean, Slash is often there too, but I remember singing, one of the last ones I sang was the song World on Fire. And, we recorded it. I'd heard it 1,000 times, but we hadn't put in that sort of, I think it's time we set this world on fire. World on fire. I would sing the call and answer thing.
Yeah, you're doing the kind of shadow vocal on the chorus.
Yeah, and it was like, Elvis, the producer, was really good about like, yeah, you should do this and yeah, you should do that, and sing. And we would just sort of get really creative with what to sing and how to sing the harmonies. I remember like literally sitting there after that song was done and just listening to it and going, this is great. Like this is really.
There's a lot of elements in that song as well. I love totally. the way Brent comes in on that with the cowbell.
Yeah.
It's fucking great. Yeah.
And it probably wasn't one of our bigger like charting singles, if you want to get into that whole. But I've never really been the kind of guy who goes like, well, this song charted better than that song. I'm like, who cares? I just know that song to me felt
that song kicks ass. Yeah.
And that song felt like it definitely said, this is who we are. Here's our flag, like clunk. And in other ways, Living the Dream, I'm going through all 3 albums here now, but Living the Dream it has its own importance because Frank is actually on the entire record. Frank, it's the first album where all 5 guys, as you can see behind you, where it feels like we had sort of become a band. We had become, we are officially a band. A band that's in 100 other projects, but but a band, yeah.
Yeah, kind of going back to World on Fire, that album cover is fucking awesome. That is one of my favorite album covers ever, is that World on Fire cover. And Bent to Fly that's got to be one of the best things Slash has ever written, ever.
Yeah,
that is
it's
just
great.
Such a fantastic song. I remember hearing that for the first time. I was like, okay, this is the song I've been waiting for Slash to release right here, is this one.
Well, it's. I felt like in some ways, like the realization of that entire record, from artwork to everything else, it just felt like it was a real piece. Where Apocalyptic Love is really cool because you can hear us talking between songs. Like it even starts with like, "Are you ready?" Apocalyptic Love, and then Fitz counts it in, and you can hear us like between songs because it's very live sounding. At the end of the record, I think after Shots Fired, you can hear Myles say, "Did you get that?" Because a siren went by. It's recorded right in Hollywood. Like Sunset, it's just off Sunset Orange, maybe. I can't remember exactly where that studio was, but it's like outside. If you open the door, it was just Hollywood, like just chaos, But at the end of the song, he goes, "Did you get that?" And Eric Valentine, the producer, goes, "Fuck yeah," or something like that. Because there was if you listen really closely, you can hear the siren go by while Myles was singing his vocal. I think that kind of stuff to me like when I would listen to like Physical Graffiti and you can hear those guys talking between songs, stuff like that. That vibe of Apocalyptic Love, it definitely has a stamp in time about this.
Well, I think You're a Lie. I think you can hear Brent counting it in before it starts.
That too, yeah.
Yeah, so and that's great. I love hearing the stories that Slash was cutting those solos on the floor for some of those tracks. That's fantastic.
Yeah, when you're putting songs together with Slash, I don't think I'm talking out of school when I say when we were putting songs together with Slash, like even in the infant stages of songs, he's putting together solos in the solo section. We don't just go like, and then 8 bars here is just going to be this, and he just plays the rhythm. He's working on a solo so that when we finally by the time we've got the song arranged, the solo is kind of his vocal. You know what I mean? Like he's really saying everything he has to say in this 4 to 8 to 16 bars of whatever he's going to play. And, so often we go in and when we record, he would just play the solo. And especially in Apocalyptic Love. And I foresee that being the next chapter, him just kind of like being as live as possible.
Yeah, and I've always found that interesting because he'll say that in interviews where the solo is always pretty consistent from that first time he plays it, because he's not trying to go in there and construct it from like a just like an arrangement standpoint. It's like you're getting Slash's feeling on all of those solos, and I love that it's consistent from that first time y'all are jamming it on the floor to what he ends up even playing live after the album's released.
It's totally true, man. It's like there's never really sort of a just press record. It's an A, right? And just kind of he's constructed it. He really has a songwriter's mind, for how he wants it all to go. And it's sort of like it's nothing is really like no stone's unturned. Is left unturned. He knows exactly where he wants this to go, how he wants it to play out, and that's sort of how it goes. Yeah.
And you can pick his playing out of a lineup, and that's that's a really good testament and it's an awesome compliment to be able to get as a guitarist, is having such an identifiable sound to where when one of those songs get played on the radio, maybe if to a casual fan, they might not recognize Myles' voice immediately, but as soon as you hear that solo, you're like, oh, this is fucking Slash playing that.
I can tell by the riff, honestly.
Yeah.
Like, they're like, say, like even like Driving Rain, the first single from the last record, it was like, this riff is like, it was immediately like, someone's going to be playing this on YouTube, like as soon as this record comes out. And they do. And it's like, he just has these things. And it's like, he's not reinventing the wheel. He just sort of is able to kind of structure these notes together that just, they're like a vocal, really. Like they really are a signature thing.
Yeah. Okay. Moving on to the Minefield thing a little bit. Take the 2 singles away. Your 3 favorite songs off the album besides Home and Alone Together.
Oh gosh. You know what the hardest part for me is the titles. I always have a hard time with titles.
What's that one song that kind of goes like this?
The one that's in D. I love the Jeremy song. I've always said that.
I love that track. Him and Alex did such an awesome job writing that.
So great.
We have to give thanks to Alex Kane for kind of making his mark on this record as well. If there's
he's kind of the 5th member.
Yeah, I was going to say, if there's a 5th member of Minefield, it's Alex Kane.
Yeah, he's an amazing dude, and what a player. Yeah. What is that song called again?
So Help Me. So Help Me.
So Help Me. Yeah.
Jeremy sings.
See, I'm so terrible with the titles.
All right, Paul Stanley.
I know. No, it's
his
more
is Gene. The albums. Yeah, his is the albums.
Gene never knows anything. He's kind of like, which one's that now? That Hide Your Line I really like. Seventh Heaven I really like, obviously.
Well, that's your 3 right there. You go.
Yeah, I'll say those 3. Yeah. I mean, it's Seventh Heaven is the third. I think it was the 2nd song you and I wrote together, and it was sort of like I say, it really sort of had this sort of like, this is kind of crazy to sing like this, but I feel like this is the way this song should be sung, in the You're Crazy Axl kind of meets Brian Johnson AC/DC kind of way, and it just sort of like, I can do this and I'm going to. So, And
I remember the text you sent me. You were like, I hope you dig this. I really embrace the rock on this too.
Yeah. And the thing was that anytime I would send you anything, it was sort of like, I don't know. I'm always sort of like of the mindset of like, I like this. I hope, and if I like something, I know somebody else is going to like it. But I certainly give you or any of the guys sort of the carte blanche to kind of say, why don't you take another shot at that? But we always seem to have pretty good luck with
No way. It's not like I'm sitting here having like high tea where I'm just like, how could this be improved? Yeah.
Yeah, but at the same time, it's kind of like, I have been in those writing situations so many times.
It's good, but is it good enough for me? Like
Exactly, yeah. The second verse needs a little polishing. But yeah, no, I think those three are all really strong. Not to mention, like, the rest of the album is really solid.
And I got to throw in there that as I'm getting the album back in its entirety tomorrow.
Cool.
The one song I'm really excited to hear because even Anthony talking to me about it, My Disease, I'm super stoked to hear that.
Oh, cool.
And
yeah, that turned out really strong. It's funny. I want to tell you because I don't think we've talked about what that song is about. I was actually really...
It's about a disease, right? No.
Look, by the title, you would think, yeah. I was watching the documentary The Vow, which is about it was a self-help program called Nexium that became essentially a sex cult. And it was like, so in the lyric, it says, in My Disease, in the third verse, it says a line of like, make the vow and wear the brand, close your eyes and take my hand. I can't remember, but in this cult, they branded the women with his initials. So it's sort of, I often find like sometimes this gets really arty to talk this way, but
Todd, you old dirty pervert.
Yeah. But when you're writing lyrics, sometimes you'll be just kind of like playing with some syllables and playing with some sounds, and then something kind of presents itself, and then you'll often be like way into like second verse before you realize that what you're writing about is something you subconsciously have taken in. And it's something that I've always used as a gigantic excuse when I'm not writing. Like if I'm going through a phase of not writing, I've often used the excuse of like, hey man, I'm always writing. I'm living, man. I gotta have, it's a bunch of nonsense, really, but it is true. It's kind of like if you get your heart broken, guess what? You're gonna write a ton of songs about you getting heartbroken. If something's going really well, you're gonna write a bunch of songs like that. So My Disease was really kind of based around the idea of, my disease. It says like the lyric, the chorus says, come and share in my disease. Won't you join me if you please? It's just sort of like this sick individual who somehow is convinced a whole bunch of other people to follow him, is essentially what I was trying to say. I mean, it's colored in rock and roll and screaming and yelling, but
it's our Look at Your Game Girl for the album.
There you go. Yes. It's a Charles Manson song.
Yes. He ghost wrote the song for us years ago before this all started.
Exactly. Yeah.
Perfect. Okay. Shit. Okay. Last note I had on here. So, this month, a few weeks from now, me and you are both playing the same event, Christmas 2020 Masquerade. I'll be playing with Mr. Kurt Frolic, who was with
You'll be actually there.
Yeah, I'll actually be there. It's the band is going to be me and Kurt splitting the lead vocals and the lead guitars for all of it.
Cool.
And then the drummer from my GNR tribute is playing drums for us. And the bass we have Ryan, Phil, and Jeremy are all taking turns on bass with us as well as Alex Kane, because Enough's Enough is going to be there playing as well.
Awesome.
And Neil, the promoter who plays Gene in Kiss America, he's doing 2 songs with us as well.
Awesome.
So it's just going to be this kind of whole big kind of jam session, And for anybody that doesn't know, you're playing with Bruce Kulick, streaming your set that night. Are there any songs you're playing with Bruce that you've never played with him before? And you don't have to name the songs, but can we expect some tunes that we haven't seen you two do?
Oh yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, it's another one of those classic examples of not just Bruce, but where people call me and they go, hey dude, Bruce is like doing this acoustic thing. We're both so busy, we just can't go anywhere. So we were like, well, if you can organize it from here, I go, yeah. And it started off as come sing a couple songs. It turns into a set. And I'm like, hey, well, how'd this happen? Next thing I know, I'm like doing an entire set. But yeah, there's a lot of stuff. I would say quite a few things on there I've never done in any other context before. Bruce is always big on like, he doesn't want to play, not necessarily all that excited to play something he hasn't played before. you know, because it doesn't really have the association with like playing on a song that he hasn't either played live with the band or that he recorded, you know what I mean? So, but so we're kind of digging into a bunch of stuff, a bunch of things that I'm pretty excited about, because it's been really fun kind of going over a lot of this. It's been great.
So you guys just rehearsed earlier today, didn't you? I think I saw that Bruce said that on Facebook, I'm pretty sure.
We rehearsed a day or two ago, actually.
Okay, I might have been a day behind seeing all that stuff.
Yeah, we're getting together again, though, to try and, you know, because we haven't seen each other. We were just talking about that. I don't think we've seen each other since January, which is weird. Which is really weird, because when you talk like this all the time, it just sort of clouds that whole thing of like, oh yeah, I guess we really haven't seen each other. That's weird.
Yeah, I feel like me and you talking like this and texting all the time is really going to take away from the impact whenever we actually do. Hey,
guys, we like nothing
hey,
to say. Got nothing to say to each other. What's up?
Yeah. I've already expressed every Seinfeld reference I can to you as friends.
Well, that never gets old for me. But yeah, no, I who knows? I wish we could be there. Just with our schedules and stuff, it's like we're
gonna come kidnap you.
Yeah, exactly. We're literally getting together, like, boom, recording that, and then running off into the other directions of all the other things we have going on. So, yeah, it's crazy. It'll be fun.
I'm very excited about that, you know, and Bruce is set on all of the KISS cruises, you know, when I'm waiting for footage from those cruises to be uploaded, because I haven't been on any of them. The footage I'm always looking forward to the most is your guys' set from those, because whether it's from the year that you guys played with Bob in the band and we're doing all those great songs off of Live 2 and Killers, like when you guys doing Nowhere to Run was just fucking awesome, man.
Dude, yeah.
And you talk about it all the time. You can't dig deep enough for those guys on the cruise.
Not at all. Now, you know, as KISS fans, we're always kind of like, yeah, of course I know that song. Does anybody else want to hear that song? And
KISS fans, what are you talking about?
Yeah, exactly. There's an Axe bass and an Iceman right there. So there you go, yeah. No, KISS fans, you know, it's like, you know, in a lot of ways, KISS fans don't want to hear Rock and Roll All Night and shout it out loud. You know, even in Short Rock City, we're like, we love those songs, but we don't need to hear them. So when you bust out, you know, something, a deeper cut, they're like, you know, Fight Heaven to Hold You is like, for some reason, they're just like going bananas. And I'm like, wow, that's awesome, you know. And then, so Bruce is pretty smart that way. And he knows, he kind of knows that he's sort of the last guy waving that flag of that era, you know. And that's
and I still watch at least once a month, like at least a couple parts of that set that you guys did with Bob in the band, because dude, that set list was just fucking phenomenal in that show, man.
It was, yeah.
You guys open with All American Man, and you're doing Larger Than Life. Like I said, Nowhere to Run, just all these fantastic songs that, you know, KISS doesn't touch with the 10
Paul Stanley solo album stuff. And
the opening track off the Stanley record. I don't know.
Tonight You Belong to Me.
Yeah, fuck, I don't know why I'm drawing a blank on that. I've heard it a million times, but just hearing all that stuff, and then even now with Zach and the band, I love the medleys that you guys do. Like I just watched the medley a night or two ago of when you did the Animalized stuff.
Oh yeah, that's a fun one,
And even the Carnival of Souls one, it's just fantastic getting to hear all these songs. You know, like I said, that KISS doesn't have anything to do with nowadays, and it's funny.
You got to get Zach on here.
I should reach out to him. You know, I've talked to him once or twice, albeit briefly, but I should reach out to him. And
he's in Corey Taylor's band now, as you know. Yeah, he's amazing, talented guy.
And those guys are doing fantastic. Oh, they got like 2 number 1 songs right now.
They're cranking it out. I think they're going.
Stream the show from the forum, like.
Yeah, I know. It's like, and they're. I'm pretty sure they're planning on going and making more music, because why not? You know, so they're
of course, ride that wave while it's happening, man. Those guys
absolutely,
tremendous success. And you know, talking about streaming a show from the forum, that's fucking legendary status. You know,
I know, it's
let alone to play a gig at the forum. But hey, we're just going to give you all the keys to this place, basically, and you can just go do whatever the fuck you want to in there.
That's what I was saying. I go, they just literally. I mean, I know the place is like, you know, been empty for a while, but you get to go and just like play in that little playground all day, dude.
Yeah.
Crazy.
I would have been more excited about getting to search around in the venue than, you know, just actually.
It's a good one, man. That's a really cool venue. It's got a lot of cool stuff there. I mean, that's where the Lakers and the Kings used to play. So yeah, it's got a lot of mojo in that building. Not to mention every concert you can imagine. Yeah.
Well, cool. So, man, I appreciate you so much coming on here, and
my pleasure, baby.
It was nice getting to meet you. No.
I know, yeah, hanging out again.
Yeah, this, like you said, this is the new normal thing for right now. So
it is, and that's I do my thing, talking to my friends on Thursdays, and then
this
Toque
Thursday
today.
you got Duff on Thursday. So anybody that's listening, go to Todd's YouTube page this Thursday. He's talking to Duff McKagan. I've been
2 o'clock Pacific time. Yeah, I'll be talking to Duff. Yeah.
5 o'clock in real America over here.
Yes. In the heart of America, it's 5 o'clock. Yeah.
Yes. And dude, I've been texting you about this episode for like a month and a half now since it popped up on your YouTube that you were premiering it. It's like, you got to move that up. You got to move that up. I'm dying to watch that episode. I know
it's happening around our birthday, so that kind of, I figured I'd lay that on you.
It's we're both getting to. I put on the Facebook post that we couldn't do our shared party at Chuck E. Cheese, so this will have to do. So, yeah.
Birthday's what, the day before mine?
5 days after yours.
5 days after. You're the 10th. That's right.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah, and I'm only like a year or two younger than you too, so.
And you look fantastic, sir.
Yeah.
Sagittarius to the end, yeah.
Dude, I'm telling you, if I still look, I think I look older now than you do. And that's if I can get some of that Todd Kerns and magic.
This is all Lucasfilm CGI right here.
Yeah,
I don't the reason you've never met me in person because I don't really exist. This is like some sort of.
This is on an elaborate prank Jeremy is.
There's like Frank Oz is working me like Yoda, like as a puppet here.
Yeah, it's just all a prank that Jeremy's pulling on me from the get-go.
Yeah, exactly.
So I'll give this kid the ride of his life, and then yank, pull off the mask. It was just me the whole time, man.
There you go. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Well, cool. All right. Like I said before, Christmas Masquerade. Everybody go get your streaming tickets to that. If you can't be there in person, me and Todd and Jeremy will also be there as well, playing the Talisman. And there's just a lot of awesome shit going on for that show. It is. I think I was talking to Ryan the other night, and I was like, this might be the most excited I've ever been about a gig, because I've never been to a Kiss Expo before. So not only am I getting to go to a Kiss Expo, I'm getting to fucking play at one. So
you better bring an extra suitcase, because I know you well enough to know that you're going to be buying a lot of fun stuff.
I'm running out of wall space, man. I've got to get a bigger house. I just moved into this place too, and I need to hit up the company I rent from and be like, I need a bigger house, not because my family is expanding, but I'm buying so much Kiss shit. Yeah. It's literally just falling out of every place in the house.
Hey, you know what? It's it keeps you young. You know what I mean?
I know, and
look at my house. It's a disaster.
Yeah, a good disaster though.
I love it.
Disaster.
Yeah. A beautiful disaster. Exactly.
We had to throw in the slash pun in there somehow.
Exactly.
Well, cool, dude. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks, buddy.
We can say
always
bye
a pleasure
here in a second. I'm going to go ahead and stop the live stream and end the recording. Thank everybody for tuning in tonight.
Thank